Okay, Roxy, I heard what you said. Now do you want to do a little talk on deep listening and Pauline Oliveros, who was a major influence on Frank to the degree he could influence Frank? She did.
Yes, I think one of the main reasons she had such a big influence on Frank is because she concentrates on listening, but for real, because that's the first step to make music. And also, she expanded our concept of what is musical. She was a real pioneer in many ways in her way of thinking, her way of composing.
Yeah.
And she was making electronic music even before there were any devices to do that. She was using a very simple tape recorder, and she would change the speed. She could have higher, lower, and then she didn't have like electronic devices for filtering.
Right.
So she would use the reflections of the sound on walls. She would make recordings of her bathroom, and but she made very interesting things, although she didn't have very complex technologies, because she was listening, and she saw you can create sometimes a very complex sound process, and you don't need to do that with a machine, because sound is an acoustic effect, and sometimes when one wants to recreate something that can be done acoustically very easily, because sound is so complex, it's very hard to do it in a technological way. There are some programs where you can program many aspects of sounds, and you want something to maybe to have the effect of this sound in this place, and it's so hard to create. It's better just to do it like in the acoustic instead of in the digital.
Right. So you're very impressed with the way she improvised with her low-budget technology she had.
Yes, I think Frank recognized very early that she was really important, and she's really a major figure of the contemporary music after the post-war contemporary music.
Yes.
Her work has been a big influence in many people. And I like that Frank recognized that so early.
Yeah.
And that he was listening to the music of Pauline Oliveros and also what she was saying. And he, for example, recognized in that piece of the differential sounds, the differential frequencies, that she was into something beyond just making music.
Beyond sense certainty, LaRouche's term, beyond sense certainty.
Yes, and Frank always complained the two major reasons people have such a bad musical taste is first that they don't have, and before it was really like that, the audience didn't have a real option of what they were listening. But Pauline told us she got actually her musical education by listening to a public radio station where they played every day 4 hours of contemporary music.
Yeah.
Do you remember the name?
KPFA in San Francisco.
I mean, that station is amazing because
well, you know what?
A lot of music
was
not aired at all.
Right, but here's what it was. It was a station created by a pacifist, Lou Hill, in about early 50s. And what he did, he got a station in San Francisco, one in L.A., one maybe down around Dallas, one in Washington, D.C., and one in New York. And the New York one, WBAI, some rich guy had a station that was right in the middle of the dial, and then he sold it. He liked the free WBAI, so he sold the perfect billion-dollar positioning in the middle of the dial. So WBAI had this special position in New York, and they started around 1960, but KPFA in Berkeley started, early 50s. The 5 stations, I think it's 5, was called Pacifica. So you can Google Pacifica, the Pacifica Foundation, Pacifica, and listen to the incredible archives. They taped everything from the 50s on, and because it was listener-sponsored and listeners controlled the content, they had dead air every morning to be filled, and that was the context for 4 hours of all kinds of music. It was a station that could do it. That's what she's talking about listening to.
Yes, I think I'm going to go to the archives to see exactly what Pauline was listening to.
Yeah. And
she then went to develop amazing theories and music.
It's an interesting, the environment is bigger than the artist. So here's this great environment that radio made possible. It's like a Finnegan's Wake in radio terms. And that, as a student, as a consumer of that environment, made her an avant-garde, brilliant composer, because she's an extension of that particular radio station.
Never said.
Never said. That's right. And it's all recorded. It's all being recorded. Now, I mentioned looking at the first video you put up of our conversation with her. I begin by talking about Gerd Stern. Gerd Stern created Pacifica. He became a friend of Lou Hill at the very beginning, and they had to sell transmitters. There was no FM or something. So you went around and sold a little receiving mechanism to somebody, and they would buy it, and they subscribed to this station. And he distributed those, the first couple of people, helping Lou Hill. So Gerd Stern, that's in the early 50s. He's in San Francisco for many years. Then he goes back to New York in the early 60s. Then he goes back out to San Francisco in right around the week that Kennedy got assassinated in 63, and that's when he put on his show at the Tape Center and met Pauline Oliveros. And so Gerd is an intricate part of this story, and Gerd's still alive today, and we've got a 24-hour interview with him. And I would like to talk to Pauline at some point about that era and what she remembers of Gerd, because Gerd goes around. He often goes to Germany. Art schools bring Gerd in because they were the first mixed media artist of New York in the mid-'60s. So he's part of art history now. So both he and Pauline, they're these fringe kids meeting in San Francisco in 63, 20-year-olds or whatever, and they're exploring sound, and here they are 50 years later, lecturing and being the eminent degrees and the authorities of the past. You know what I mean? The two of them.
Yeah. Shaping also, in many ways, still the music, the contemporary music, and other aspects, because the second thing Frank was also complaining about is that he said people had a very bad musical education.
Right.
So, and musical education starts with listening. And Pauline Oliveros went to develop these Here Comes Everybody theories about the importance of deep listening, not only for musicians, but for everybody.
Yeah.
And
for physical health reasons. That's the superficial thing about deep listening. But there was just this discovery of the gravitational waves. Well, it was already discovered, or yes,
but it was proven that they really exist, because two dark holes or black holes collide, and we can hear the C tone that makes.
Yeah.
I think that's amazing that we can listen to such an event and
to the big note.
Yes, that this is going to change physics in every way, and they say it's going to be such a revolution. We're going to teletransport, and really everything is going to change very drastically because of this discovery.
Right. Now,
so sound is really becoming more and more important in many ways, and this is another aspect of things that you have been saying for a long time.
Yeah.
The importance of the expansion of our perception with technology. And you expand what McLuhan was saying. You're not just repeating
right.
these ideas.
Well, Zappa was all about deep listening, and both he and Pauline are talking about post-audio sound. They bring in synesthesia and what I would say is tactility. They both are working with tactile, audio tactile environments. So they're listening with not just the ears. And it would be, a college student could make a paper on the difference between them. She goes inner and into meditation, and Frank goes outer into newer, better technologies, both with the same goal of getting you to listen to your world and not be limited by just an ear listening. That's why Zappa said this movie for your ears. He used other senses as the concept for his music. You know, this visible, kinetic thing for your ears. So I don't know enough about Pauline's work, but I suspect she could learn a bit about media on the McLuhan sense from Zappa. Zappa's not here to learn from her, but I think Zappa already was able to do the meditative stuff. He had a picture taken of himself around 66, 67 in a meditative yoga position, you know, mocking the activity. And that was right when the Beatles were going with the Maharishi in India. So Zappa was not inclined to emphasize the inner mystic, though he did say he dropped his Catholicism when he was 18 when he heard and read about Zen. So Zen influenced him in his late teens, which is the Buddhist world of Pauline Oliveros.
Yes, and in a way it reminds us of Cage, because McLuhan said we were going east, we were going inside.
Yeah.
And this type of development in art are really reflecting what is going on with the electric environment, that the West was going east.
East is going west.
What would you say about it?
Yeah, now I was just thinking, Frank used to always distinguish L.A. from San Francisco, different scenes. The hippie scene were not freaks. And I've joked with that with various Zappa critics and friends. But there is the L.A. San Francisco dialectic in the relationship of Pauline and Frank. She's L.A., she's San Francisco sensibility. She's into living sort of naturally. And she's plain. She's not dressing up fancy costumes unless she does it and I don't know of it, you know. Maybe she does theater. But her image is more the contemplative hesychast, Hesychast, which is going inner, and Frank is the outer. Now, she's still alive and he isn't, so that might be a factor in their choices. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so what I really like about Pauline, and I told her what I sort of found revolutionary, was the idea she gave me that everything is music, everything is vibration.
Right.
And even matter listens, like I was saying, because everything is vibrating and sound shapes matter. And,
is this something you got this year or years ago from her?
Years ago, just the idea that for me, that everything is vibration. And I really thought, like Tesla said, you can understand the universe with the vibration, and there was all these theories like in antiquity or like the Gurdjieff theories about the music. That there is a way of understanding the universe through vibration and music. I really believe there is something important there. That was very, very crucial, that we have to understand sound, somehow understand reality.
How old were you when you got this idea?
T1,
How young
2719.
Oh, that's just a YouTube I brought up. What?
Well, he said that the age I was, I think.
What'd they say?
I don't know, 2719.
That might be the part I'm looking for. But so what? But how old were you when you got that idea?
Yes, I was like 11 because the composer where I had my studio at the project, he was into Gurdjieff and all these ideas, which are very complex. They get very, very complex.
Yeah.
And he will talk about these things, and I found that very fascinating.
Well, I'm looking
because
up.
For me, it was like really an expansion of what I thought music was. I got the impression it goes beyond, but there's like a big secret there to discover, a big revelation.
Big secret. And then that gets reinforced by Ion. He gives you a new level of understanding vibration.
Yes, and because of my admiration for all these mystics that could develop these wonderful abilities, that I thought everybody should be able to activate all these spiritual gifts, like the bilocating or the uncorrupting.
Right.
And many things, speaking in tongues, and all these wonderful capabilities they had. All that was replaced then by the music, because I didn't become a nun or a mystic.
Right. Well, I'm looking at the Lumpy Gravy. I want to play you something. Trying to see where that part would be.
That's one of the things that Ion has been saying since the beginning, that frequency is very important, and my understanding is we have this big effect from music, even emotional, because, as I said, it's a way of massaging your particles, your atoms. It goes really at that level with the vibration. Like it gets into your cells, and I have the impression Ion is saying there are like some frequencies we cannot perceive, but with the completion, these other frequencies that somehow shape things for our perfection, for our completion, are amplified, or there is some change, some mutation that because what I also find very amazing from Pauline is that he's saying we can hear at the quantum level.
Right.
It's so clear when everything is vibration that our particles bonding and vibrating. There is a hearing we are not aware of. Like, for example, I remember when there was a big earthquake in Mexico City, I remember there was a very low sound, and you can feel that vibration. It's more than hearing with your ears. It's like a feeling. And like that, we are listening to things that are out of our hearing range, but the frequencies are there.
Yeah.
And are hitting us and affecting us. And maybe we can feel like in the case of an earthquake, the vibration, also with our feet, with our skin. So it's really not only the ear that is listening. It's, as you say, audio tactile. Right.
Well, in 1968, if you bought Lumpy Gravy, you're a teenager and you buy the album, this is what you would hear. At some point on the album, a voice says, everything in the universe is made of one element, which is a note, a single note. Atoms are really vibrations, which are extensions of the big note. Everything's one note. So the idea that everything is vibrations, or the molecular matter level is vibration, is right there in Frank's idea. He put in an album called Lumpy Gravy in 1967, which gets released in 68. So that was the year you were born. You could have picked up on this, and then you found 11 years later a place doing it in the lab. I was trying to find the actual part. I can't find where it actually is on the album.
Yes, and I have mentioned before how matter is changing. For example, the case of water is very easy to see when you apply heat.
Say it again?
The structure of the molecules, the water. When you apply heat, the structure of the water changes so that it is transmutated from a state into another state, from liquid to vapor.
Right.
But then it can also be ice. And yes, when we apply these other aspects to frequency, like he was talking a lot about magnetism. What was the other thing?
Frank?
Frequency, magnetism. No, ion.
Oh, tuning fork, magnetism. The other thing?
Yeah, he always had this, I think, like three aspects. The frequency, the magnetism.
Oh, yeah. And the positioning, the proximity, or, I haven't thought about that in a while. There's 5 of them. Polarity.
Well,
polarity.
Yes, these aspects that are in a way like the particles, the like, for example, I would say these innocent particles are there being sculpted by these things and bonding together, organizing themselves together in different ways and creating different elements or changing our cells or who knows what's happening, and they are listening to these frequencies.
Right.
And they may be so subtle we are not aware with our ears, but at that level we are listening. Right.
Now Zappa has, in the article he wrote for Life magazine, June 28, 1968, the title is "The Oracle Has It All Psyched Out." So that's a reference to him putting on the fact that he can explain everything. He writes in the article, in the Abnuccio Imuca Electric Symphony Orchestra album, Lumpy Gravy, there's a section on side 2 where several unidentified characters discuss the origins of the universe. One of the characters explains the concept of the big note. Everything in the universe is composed basically of vibrations. Light is a vibration, sound is a vibration, atoms are composed of vibrations. And all these vibrations just might be harmonics of some incomprehensible fundamental cosmic tone. Now, when we talk to the Evergreens, they say the basic cycle is 600 years. So it's interesting to keep that in mind. Now, it then says the big note is discussed again on Civilization Phase 3, came out in 1994. So I click on a different octave, and it gives the what's said on Civilization. Spider says, we are actually the same note, but, then John says, but different octave. Spider says, right, we are 4,928 octaves below the big note. Girl number 3, are you trying to tell me that this whole universe revolves around one note? Spider, no, it doesn't revolve around it. That's what it is. It's one note. Spider says, everybody knows that lights are notes. Light is just a vibration of the note, too. Everything is. Girl number 3 says, that one note makes everything else so insignificant. John, what about negative light? Spider says, pigs use it for a tambourine, which is one of the reasons why their music is so hard to understand. That sounds like electronic composing, using negative light. Anyways, that's on. That's a tape that was made. I don't know if that was made in '67 because he made some more in the early '90s, including his daughter was on them. So this is either made later or it's a script that Frank got them to say that he wrote back in '67. But there it is. There's the big note. Now, I want to bring in an idea that relates to Pauline Oliveros, which is another aspect of this. So he says, this is, by the way, the article where Frank talks about Pauline Oliveros is the LA Free Press, dated August 8th, JW's birthday. Wow. August 8th, 1969. And it goes, it's the August 8th to 14th issue. 8 and 14 is 22. So it's a good number. So, let's see. So Frank starts off saying, because the interviewer says, I just heard your new album, Uncle Meat, and some of it sounds like some of the new Polish music, and some of it sounds like Zap Comics set to music. That's referring to R. Crumb's Zap Comics, who was very popular at 68, 69. His collection of comics, underground comics, it was called Zap Comics, and he was getting a lot of attention in the cartoon world. And this interviewer, Paul Eberle, links Crumb and Zappa. So he all serious intent. I seriously intended to make that album sound exactly the way it sounds. And some people can't understand that you can seriously want to do something that's not serious. So Paul says, they think the two have to be done separately, like Spike Jones made some funny records and others that were just chiffon music. Zappa says, what we do and have from the very beginning is concept art. You know, like the real artistic merit of what we do does not necessarily exist on the disc itself. It's like difference tones. I tried to explain this concept in a lecture I gave to a group of radio broadcasters. Do you know Pauline Oliveros' piece on the Argosy label, which Pauline later corrected to be on the Odyssey label? There was no Argosy label, she says. Pauline's made a piece of music on which the sounds are generated this way. Two sounds, one below the audible range of hearing and one above the audible range of hearing. And from them are produced difference tones in quotes. Paul says, are they audible? Zappa says, yeah, they're quite audible, but they happen in between the two real things. So if you vary those two tones slightly, all this mass in between shifts. And so she's created a piece where the tones are varied slightly, and the whole thing is fed into a system of tape plays. And so when played back on top of one another, it makes a certain thickness, a bandwidth of non-existent madness. And so then he says, and some of the things that we do function on a related principle. Some of the ideas are below the level of human consciousness, and some of them are above the level of human consciousness. That sounds like ion. And in the middle is this peculiar byproduct, which is the manifestation of what those ideas are. Then he says to Paul, does that sound a little bit too abstruse for you? Paul, who's laughing, says, no, I was just laughing because I wondered how many of your listeners pick up on that. Zappa says, well, none of them do. And this peculiar monstrosity has been manufactured and distributed by an industrial mechanism, which gives it this other weird dimension, you know. And some of the albums we've put out, the content of the album is completely irrelevant to the concept of the album. The content of the album is completely irrelevant to the concept of the album. Do you follow me? Paul says, yes. Did the radio executives you lectured to understand that? He says, about 3 out of 100. So, I bring this up because McLuhan emphasized form over content. Here it's Frank mentioning form over content. Form is an idea, so he tends to be in the LaRouche quadrant there with the idea as the framework. Remember we were quoting Miles many shows ago where he was asking Frank to describe what is the idea in your music or behind things, and Frank didn't really spell it out. Left Barry Miles a bit frustrated. But so in my chart, I've got Zappa beside McLuhan. That's why, one of the reasons. They're both talking about the content is not as significant as the form or the idea. So you have Frank, miming McLuhan's ideas simply, a lot more simply than McLuhan, as well as working with the legacy of John Cage, who was very involved with McLuhan. So Zappa never visited McLuhan, but he was working with a lot of the same avenues. And I think Pauline is too. I'm pretty sure she's looked at McLuhan. She couldn't be influenced by Cage and not know about McLuhan, but we forgot to ask her that. So you see, she and Frank are influenced by the same thing. And Gerd Stern. Let me add this point.
I remember reading, just very short because it has to do with that McLuhan saying the text of Cage were really relevant. And he said not the music, but the ideas he had about sound and music.
That's what McLuhan said about Cage.
Yeah.
I just wanted to say that Gerd Stern comes out to the Tape Center in November '63, and he puts on a mixed media show, and there was a visitor from Vancouver, British Columbia, art gallery owner or manager, who said to Gerd at this performance in late '63, your ideas sound like Marshall McLuhan. Have you ever heard of him? And Gerd had heard of McLuhan, actually had read McLuhan's report from 1960 that he got through John Cage. So this guy invited Gerd to go up to Vancouver in January, February of '64. So Gerd goes up, he and his partner, Michael Callahan, and they meet McLuhan, and he and McLuhan become friends and correspond with each other. So right after, let's say, Pauline meets Gerd meets McLuhan. See, so it's very close. They're rubbing up against each other in different scenes, which all are coming from the same avant-garde landscape or module. And you can see it in the way people pass one virus on to another. So
Yes, because another thing that I see they have in common is that they say it's very important to listen, because this is going to affect how you react, how you respond. And it's not only by making music, but in your actions, in your thinking, in your conversation.
Your whole being.
Your new music. Yeah. It's like you have to listen and they're expanding our conception of what is listening.
Right.
You listen with your whole body to the whole environment, not only to people or music, because you're interacting with and responding.
Your cells are communicating with other cells. Right. Now,
yes,
in that article, the Oracle has it all psyched out, Frank talks about the young kids responding to the new rock, and they consider the music as bone conduction. They feel the music, the amplified music, in their bones. So they're not listening through their ears. And McLuhan says the same thing, that rock music is not meant to be listened to. It's meant, it presses up against you like foam rubber. It's the whole environment pressing up against your body. So you got McLuhan talking about foam rubber is in pop music, rock music, and Zappa saying it's bone conduction. So they're moving towards...
Yes, and for me, the fascinating thing about McLuhan and Joyce and what you say is finding these explanations of why things developed the way they did.
Yeah.
Why people start to have this need to go to concerts or to discos, clubs, to feel this very loud noise.
Yeah.
Like they need this massage. And there is a reason behind all this. It's not just like somebody had the idea to start playing music louder. And
no,
there is these technologies that allow us to record and amplify frequencies that may not be perceived. And that's how Pauline Oliveros came to be aware of the richness of the environment that we are not aware of, because she made a recording, and when she played back that recording, she realized there were a lot of noises and sounds she didn't remember listening when she was making the recording. So she realized that we are really not aware of what's really going on around us. There is so many things going on, and we're not aware of.
That's because of the electric environment. Bucky Fuller said that by the first part of the 20th century, we moved into an invisible environment, and you could even say inaudible. So it was beyond the chemical body sensory norms. So we started living in invisible, well, actually a tactile interplay through most of the 20th century. So you hear in the music of the 50s, it's still the smooth radio effect. Now, Elvis and them start to come in and put some roughness in, which is caused by the tactile mosaic image of the TV. But 10 years later, you've had a population, massaged by the tactile post-ear TV environment, and plus the mixed media of the global theater and the satellite environment in the 60s. So McLuhan said all the senses, all the old chemical body senses, had to start screaming. I call it Baroque spirals on my chart. They all had to go to high decibels to get attention in relation to the black hole of tactile mosaic, because tactility is not a sense. So all the senses rushed in to the black hole of the TV tactility, the black and white TV and then the colored TV of the mid-60s. And part of that was wailing, loud rock music, which, if you played that for someone in 1910, they'd arrest you. They wouldn't be able to take it because they hadn't been massaged through first half of the 20th century. Remember in the movie, maybe you never saw it, Back to the Future, where is it Michael J. Fox? His character starts playing, shredding guitar music to the 50s dance hall, and they just think he's nuts. So we've got the changes of the second half of the 20th century show the medium is the message. There's enough speed up and change in technological environments. So artists were forced to become like Zappa and Pauline. They were forced to start looking at the modes of shifting of figure ground environments. They had to go that way. So they were being dragged that way by the technological environments, and they had the personalities where they wanted to explore that. Whereas the very man that we began with in our first episode, with the interview with John Adams, a major American composer, he's not responding to the massage. He's trying to preserve an older aesthetic excellence based on Gutenberg values, you could say.
This is like LaRouche.
Yes.
He also thinks music ended with Brahms.
Right.
And then it's all noise, but this is the explanation you just said. Why does this become noise? Music expands beyond notes and harmonies.
Yeah, William Irwin Thompson, in one of his books in the late 80s, early 90s, talks about how jazz in the 30s represented the new economy. They would take noise and make, sweet music out of it. The noise of the information environment before World War II was going to be a big factor in the economy after World War II. So the jazz artists were actually economists showing the model of modulating noise as what was going to happen in the expanding wealth of the post-war, post-50s global abundance of media experiences where all the media are stepping up. Look, you got kinetic space, you got hot rods or car races, Formula 500 zooming around, trying to make kinetic space catch up to tactility, which is a no space. You've got rock music. You've got incredible painting styles, splashing paint. The eye is trying to keep up. And then you have movies. They're trying to keep up. Then you get into special effects. So all the senses are responding to the big note, which has been externalized in the global theater and the global membrane, and it's not a sound. It's like Zappa says, it has no content. You could even take Zappa's words. I don't think he meant this, but I could take his words. And he's saying the concept is more important than the auditory content of the Uncle Meat album. So what is he pointing to? He's pointing to the same thing McLuhan was pointing to, the tactile, non-sensory world that was massaging everybody. Non-sensory, it wasn't one sense, it was the interplay. So it just occurred to me, we want to relate this to the five bodies. So I think I've got something to read, which would be pretty interesting. I wanted to read it into the record, but I don't have to do it right this minute, but I'm going to do it. Would you like to talk some more about what you're saying?
Well, I also find it very interesting because the way you're explaining the evolution of music, I find it very, very interesting.
Well, glad. I'm very happy. Very happy that someone's listening.
African American went to develop. They were turned on by the electric environment,
and they made the right.
Everybody tribal.
Yes.
And everybody went back to the blues and the jazz, and then jazz went to evolve into the free jazz, which is also like very chaotic, very loud.
Yeah.
Very.
Dissonant.
They were looking for freedom of expression, and
but not just that. That's the idea, and that can be translated into politics. They were looking to create tactile sounds. They were just screeching, and 50 years ago that's not music, but here they were screeching, and people respond to it because they were trying to make sound equal tactility, and it can't be done. You can't make silence with sound.
Yes, and there is also a beauty inside all this chaos, and there is some type of...
Well, there's order. I'm spelling out the order. The TV, when you understand what the TV image is, you understand why all the other senses would become heightened, and why Ornette Coleman would start, playing what most people call extremely dissonant sounds. He was trying to express not just the tragedy of the black people in the United States. It wasn't just racial. It was aesthetically responding to the satellite, to Sputnik. That was McLuhan's important point.
And for example, Picasso said he could paint like the masters in El Prado, in the museum in Madrid. When he was a child, he could do amazing things.
Right.
And it took him all his life to be able to paint and draw like a child. And in jazz, in free jazz, many think it's just like about making noise, but this response and this type of music is so complex. I mean, most of the musicians that do that are actually very well trained.
Yeah.
Because to be able to do music in a situation that seems to be chaotic and everything it's another big aspect of what became so important during the 20th century is improvisation, responding in the moment to the situation and faster and faster and faster.
Yeah, that's part of William Irwin Thompson's. The economy had to respond, improvise. The corporation had to improvise their responses because the audiences, their markets, their clients and customers were changing so rapidly. So it became, everybody was forced to be a jazz musician, to improvise as the events unfold every day. Now, there's one line in McLuhan's writings.
And another thing that you do, that you have been trained to yourself to do is to improvise your mental jazz very fast and talk about very complex subjects and topics, like
rapidly.
You're doing now, doing this connecting and
disconnecting,
improvising,
connecting and letting go. I just wanted to say, in McLuhan's Explorations number 8, came out in 1957, volume 8. He has one question in the middle of the booklet: "Is anybody listening?" See, there was
because that's another thing. We say we live in the age of communication,
right?
But we should live in the age of deep listening. Like there's a lot of things going on, but are we listening?
Well,
are we responding correctly?
Well, I always thought
really deep listening is very important.
Right, and I'm a genius of that. I'm well known for being a good listener, and I was able to do my radio shows for decades because I could listen and improvise on whatever paltry thing they said, whoever I was talking to. I could take the littlest fragment and compose something out of it, make rapid pattern recognition. So the kind of deep listening I do, I don't see Pauline doing that. She's listening as a monad, not a dyad, not in dialogue, unless she does this in lectures and that. I'm not that familiar with all her work. So maybe she covers it all. But when you're playing an instrument, it's monadic. You're playing to perform for some listener. But what I think is tactile is dialogue. I say the most important part of any artist's output is their interview, whoever interviews them. How you perform in the interview.
Well, I think she's exploring more and more that because she works with Ione and she works a lot with pitch.
Yeah. Yeah, she probably is doing that.
Doing more this type of maybe more conventional react and responding conversation. But for me, conversation it's another branch of music. It really has the same aspects of playing. You have to listen and respond, and your response is the new music. Like that's what Ian is saying.
Right.
We have to learn how to talk.
Well, I like the definition of responsibility, the ability to respond. Now,
because this is what Ion is expanding in this conversation. He says we're listening even at the atomic level, quantum or cellular, wherever. At many levels, we're listening and responding physiologically, mentally. And Pauline Oliveros also got that she says you have to deep listen in your dreams, in your imagination, in your thoughts, not only in the outer kingdom.
Right.
He doesn't use these words, but it's like you have to listen in all your three kingdoms.
Hey, you know what? Yeah, let's do this. Just give me an idea.
But wait. This is the expansion Ion is then adding, because the new music, your speech, is the key to manifestation.
Right. Now, you just gave me an idea. What Pauline, what she's trying to do with her deep listening, if she's analyzing dreams, is she's trying to hear parallel worlding. I don't know if she knows about it, but if she listened to Ion, she'd realize that she would change her image of dreaming and realize she's going to other worlds, and then start listening to that. Become aware that she's actually listening through her dreams, other worlds. So I think we have found a way to deepen her deep listening. It's getting deeper in this world. If she starts realizing listening to other worlds, then it becomes more surface again, and she can float through various non-constipated environments. But you can get real focus on listening in the physical, and of course she's including cellular and invisible, inaudible levels. But what about the fact you're listening to other worlds?
Of course, because as Ion is saying, the mystery landscape is becoming more and more visible, and many things that we might consider woo-woo are not. They're just part of things as they are, but we could not explain them. And maybe this change in the physics, this revolution that is taking place, is bringing many things into to manifest. So we really need to start expanding also our concepts and be open to these new ideas, like we interact in parallel worlds, and that the dreaming is not only dreaming, and the importance of what you're saying to manifest, and many ideas that Ion is presenting. We had to really take them seriously and expand, because it's not only there for entertainment, like we're talking about these weird things just for fun. No, it's really, I think, to be considered seriously.
Yes, it's a benefit to your sanity to notice these other dimensions. I kept thinking of talking about the swallowing up of everything by the electric extensions, the digital extensions, but I can't remember where I was going to go with that. So what I wanted to bring in was the 5 bodies aspect of this, because I don't know if I think Pauline is trying to hear the different, but I think Zappa was able to incorporate the 5 bodies, not the 5, but multiple bodies in his concepts as early as the late 60s with the robots in Captain Beefheart Meets the Grunt People. So I found this section in a book called Body Drift by Arthur Croker. Came out in 2012. And I was looking at his opening couple of pages, and I think it is a pretty good description of what my 5 bodies are about. So I wanted to read it into the record. But before I do that, yes, we'll do that. I forgot. I want to read what Bob Marshall and I said to Frank in discussing Pauline Oliveros' work. So I want to read this as an interview done in October 21st, 22nd, 1988. And so Bob and I bring up the idea, and we say to Frank, I'm asking him about the idea part of his work, and I go, where I get the idea part is I remember you did an interview in the LA Free Press in the summer of '69, and you mentioned Pauline Oliveros' work with sound, above the audible and below, creating a mass, and you liked that idea. Frank says, not that it created a mass, it created something audible. It produced a some difference tone, which happened to be located within the audible frequency range. By combining something so high you couldn't hear it and something so low you couldn't hear it, it yielded something in the middle that you could hear. Whether or not you like what you hear in the middle is another question. The concept is brilliant, meaning Pauline's concept. So Bob Marshall says, yeah, because it showed you how physical reality is, or the way it is, right? And Frank says, it's one aspect of it. And Bob says, are there other aspects you could talk about? Frank says, if you buy the idea that the vibrational rates translate into matter, and then if you understand the concept of vibrational rates above perception and below perception combining to create a reality, that opens up the door to some pretty science fiction matter possibilities. If you can create an audible reality by a sine wave above the range of what your ear can hear and another one from below, and you put them together and suddenly it creates something that your ear can detect, is it not possible that solid matter of an unknown origin could manifest periodically because of frequencies of some unknown nature above and below which, for short durations, manifest solid objects? It could explain a lot of strange things that people see. Then Bob Marshall says, UFOs come to mind immediately. And Zappa says, yeah. Then Bob says, there's much in the theosophical literature, in the mystical literature, and the mediumistic literature that says that's the way reality is. And they hoik that up as an explanation. But science traditionally doesn't buy that. So Frank says, I don't approach any of this stuff from a mystical standpoint. I'm not a mumbo-jumbo guy. I think that there are physical realities, and most of them are not understood. So that would agree with Pauline. Part of the reason why science moves so slow is because many of the people who do science and who receive grants have to be conservative individuals, conservative in quotes, in order to receive the money to do the research. And people who can convince a foundation or a funding source that they are conservative enough not to squander the money are not really the best guys or gals to do science. Give me some Teslas. Bring out some Teslas here. Give me some maniacs. Let's just try it and see what happens. That's the way you're going to get stuff to happen. The other criteria by which people are funded is whether or not the end result of the research will yield something that explodes or kills. If you can convince a funding organization that you have a new way to kill, and you are conservative and won't squander the money, you can be in the science business. So then Bob Marshall says, so much of what you say is common sense and what people have said a lot, maybe through history. But since World War II, there have been a lot of books written and movements come up, and nobody seems to have the staying power to apply it in a practical way. They get lost in the ideal of, quote, this is the way it should be, unquote, and then fumble when given the opportunity or don't even know the odds they're up against. So Frank responds, well, another thing you have to remember about all science and all art, it is impossible if you're starving to death. Society has to reach a point where you can be self-sustaining to the point where your basic physical needs are taken care of so you can allow your brain to think about stuff like art and science. That's why artists and scientists have to keep their eye on the economy, because if things get tough, they can't do their shit anymore. And Bob Marshall says, scientists and artists? And Frank says, yeah. And then Bob says, so that's another warning. So just finish here. Because as the economy declines, Frank says, the willingness of people who control cash to spend for research on things other than stuff that kills. Now, you know that LaRouche says the whole economy is built. It can only grow through research. So this is the opposite of LaRouche's answer to Riemannian economics. So Frank says, because as the economy declines, the willingness of people who control cash to spend for research on things other than stuff that kills basically has to kill you or you're not going to get any money for it. For every cure for something, implied in it is, withholding the cure causes death. So basically, if you want to be a large-scale murderer, you can clean up. Occasionally, when times are good, they'll fund something else, by accident. Who knows how it happens? But when times are tough, those projects never get a buck, and actually research departments close down. You can't afford to run them anymore, so the only thing that's left is weapons. And once you build a weapon, what are you going to do? You got to use the weapon, and the thing has to have planned obsolescence so you can update the weapon. It's the spare parts contract that's really the thing that all these defense guys are interested in. Everything wears out. They're not going to run these new weapons in a test environment. They're going to be in the desert. Dirt will get in there. Got to sell them some more camshafts. Whatever it is, they're looking at long-range economic benefits from building a weapon. And in order to use something that kills people, you have to have a reason to kill people, a war. If not a war, a regional conflict, a small war. At very least, you have to single out somebody to be an enemy, and you have to direct your national interest to the destruction of the enemy. Now, we've been going along for years with communism, only it's not working so well anymore because the communists just did some jujitsu. They're becoming capitalists. Mm-hmm. And what the fuck is going to happen then? Who are we going to go after then? This is a big worry. And then Carolyn, who's there, says, Dr. Dean says, they're going to go after the public. Frank says, I think that is very true. The public. That is absolutely true. Look, this new drug law creates the position of drug czar, but the amendment to the drug law is this pornography bill. Did you know that? Bob Marshall says, no. Frank says, you didn't know that? Bob Marshall says, I haven't heard it. And Frank says, at the last minute, they attached this anti-pornography rider to the drug bill. This is to go after people that they claim have been long-time purveyors of obscene material. And what it provides is that, just as in the drug bill, if a guy has a yacht and he's using it to run cocaine, they can confiscate the yacht. Let's say you were in the record business and you had been a long-time purveyor of obscene material. They can confiscate all of your property. This goes back 20 years. It's a 20-year retroactive bill. Now, Frank had to be a bit concerned because he does a lot of sexual innuendo and swearing, and they could class his album as pornography.
Offensive.
Yeah, offensive. And I go, well, Bob Marshall says, when was that implemented? Frank says, yesterday. And I go, when was it discussed? You mean it was made a law yesterday? And Frank says, look, you know about the drug bill. They've been diddling with this thing for quite some time. But on one side, I actually saw the debate on C-SPAN. I think the thing was drafted by Strom Thurmond and rammed through by Orrin Hatch. They first tried to attach it to some child care bill. Bob Marshall says, this is earlier this year? Frank says, this is within the last month. Bob Marshall says, really? Frank says, yes. And Bob Marshall says, okay, I've been on vacation for this past month. I've missed this. And Frank says, Congress is trying to shut down. They all want to go home and campaign. This is in November. No, this is October 88, election year. And they're trying to crank out all this legislation. So yesterday, it was announced on CNN that they had attached this amendment to the drug bill in order not to have a mutiny by the conservatives in the Congress. So all the Democrats went along with it and allowed them to pass this. The drug bill is bad enough, but they've pasted this other thing onto it. So the drug bill allows for the creation of a drug czar. Can there be a porn obscenity czar coming up within a matter of moments if they actually make this law? A porn czar. I think the whole thing is unconstitutional, but before you can take it to the Supreme Court for a test case, you know Reagan will sign this thing. It'll be on the books. They'll be out there enforcing it. And then there will be a test case that will go to the Supreme Court. Now, if they delay it long enough to go to the Supreme Court, they're going to have all right-wing judges on there. They're going to uphold the law. And what you will have at that point is the machinery that the Nazis would have loved to have had in place at the beginning of their career. This offers the legal right to stamp out any kind of intellectual activity because there's no legal definition of obscenity. You can't really nail it down. And any person can claim that something is obscene. They do that on YouTube. Didn't that happen to you? Somebody said, yep, spinning his waist obscene. And YouTube called, Roxy, take that down. It's obscene. That's the Android meme. Here's another thing. Another thing Frank says. Here's another thing it allows for. Not only the confiscation of property, but it allows for prosecution of the person making it, the person shipping it, and the person receiving it. You don't even have to, that means us. You don't even have to buy it. If you've received it, you can be subject to this law. It is the most broadly written, nefarious piece of legislation I have ever heard. And Bob Marshall says, and it was made law yesterday, October 20th. And Frank says, I don't think it's been signed into law yet. I believe that they announced that the porno amendment was attached to the drug bill yesterday. I believe there's still some discussion, but I have no doubt that it stands a very good chance of getting through, partly because a lot of the people in the Congress have already gone home to campaign, and they're not even there to vote on it. And you know the conservatives are going to be there to vote on it because it's the fascist dream come true. So that's the end of that section of the Bob Marshall interview with Zappa. Now, Frank, 9 years before, had made an album where this musician, Joe, of Joe's Garage, is put in jail for making music. This is what Frank's developing here. He's showing how everybody's going to be made a criminal in some way by these connections over the bust of somebody doing porn. Everybody else gets implicated. It's actually busting the environment, the distributors, the manufacturers, the consumers. The whole medium is being arrested. That's a new idea. The Android meme is arresting other parts of itself, other environments.
Yes, because the Android meme tells you everything is now there for you to know and use, but then there are many restrictions that people may not be aware of, and they may be persecuted or
That's right.
punished because they sampled something or they did this pirate eBay or some type of common use place in the internet, and they are infringing in some copyrights. And
that's what Carolyn Guertin discusses in the book we're going through, Digital Prohibition. There's so many people getting arrested or charged, they didn't even know what they were violating. But see, Frank's talking in 1988, and Joe's Garage is almost 40 years ago. A lot has happened since 88. You have the creation of the 5 bodies. Now, this is where I want to bring in Arthur Croker and see if Frank anticipates this kind of sociology that we have today. Does he anticipate it in Civilization Phase 3? So,
I just want to add something to that actually the replay and the reuse of ideas and
recycling,
and memes has always been very important to progress, to develop new patterns. So when they're trying to control the sampling and the use of some part of something, it's really affecting the whole evolution of
creativity,
of the arts and ideas, and
That's why McLuhan went into analyzing the process of creativity. He saw that creativity itself gets you into a lot of rabbit holes, including becoming famous and then suffering the effects of that. What is your audience? Who is your audience? So McLuhan analyzed the creative process itself rather than being creative. But of course, that was a creative response.
I think that's very important because, like you said, here comes everybody, and Pauline, one of her main goals is to make people aware that we're actually like a musical instrument. We generate sound and we resonate, and there is a lot of rhythm in our biology, and everybody should be able to participate in making music.
Yes.
She thinks it's something in our physicality. Like they found there are specific neurons in the brain that are only for music. So it's part of our neurons of our brain that we need this. We need music and to make it and to listen to it. And she wants people to have an expanded experience of what it is to really listen to music and to make music, to respond. And because she sees that besides the aesthetic and the joy, the fun, there are other aspects to sound that, like, for example, healing, or
there's political implications. You know, you got these college students in the United States, you know, all keen on Bernie Sanders, who advocates free education, like you guys have in Europe, free, no cost for university education. But this is because when everybody's engaging in the creative process and nobody knows what is ultimately art, Don Thiel wrote a whole book on this called Beyond the Word, about what is poetry and what is poetic, what's aesthetic, and what's valuable. And in the end, he's confronting the situation that everything has become poetic and aesthetic. That's another aspect of Here Comes Everybody. Here Comes Everybody as artists. So eventually a society that can't make old hierarchical distinctions between skills and consumers and producers are going to accept the guaranteed income. They're going to accept that everybody should be given a basic stipend and be able to go create from that. In other words, an extreme communism would be the effect of our digital environment right today. I mean, everybody's becoming one thing. What?
That's a thing I see Frank and Pauline have in common, that they saw audience participation is really important. It's not only a passive listening required.
Right.
It goes beyond, and it all has a media and ecological explanation. Why is audience participating? It's not just like they want to be cheerleaders and make you be part of the team. There are other reasons to this participation. It's like
well, it's a nervous response. You can't.
It can not be otherwise.
Right. McLuhan said the electric environment demands response. When the phone rings, you got to answer it. And we're talking about 50, 80 years ago when the phone came in. Now people have separated themselves from that demand. They can willy-nilly participate or not engage with all their recorded answering, voicemail, everything. We have an interesting new detachment that's happening, as well as extreme involvement. Both tactile, both are happening at the same time. So, what's the next idea? So then you got this huge participation, huge alienation, tactile. Nobody can get a central position. They can only get 11 listeners, a small audience. So you can't get the big deal. So then you can't make much money. And then so you're forced to be pissed off and creating. And they say, one of the great joys of life is being an artist. Well, most artists today operate under incredible stress, just as everybody else does, in an environment which demands you make sense out of it. You participate, you create patterns. You get on there, read CNN, and then make your comments and do your insults. This communication, such extreme communication, which Baudrillard calls the ecstasy of communication, has flipped into no communication. No consequential effect. So in that situation, nobody can listen. So, Pauline is bringing up the idea of deep listening in a world that can't and is not advisable to listen anymore. Here we find the flip point here. Bob makes a breakthrough. Miss Oliveros, unfortunately, we've pushed the deep listening so far that it's not wise to listen. You'll be drawn in. You'll end up voting for Trump or voting for Hillary because you listened. So you end up like the ancient mystics.
Ulysses.
Or Ulysses, right? You bind yourself to the mast. I'm just going to say that, right? So,
you encounter all the monsters in the media landscape.
Right,
like Trump.
Yeah. Or us. We're a media monster for some people. Iondom is a media. Ion's a media monster.
Yeah.
So. Roxana?
Yeah.
What's Roxana? That's the monster. What one is that?
No, Ion said I was going to become a monster.
Oh, yes, Roxana. That's right. Godzilla. Right. Now, here's what's interesting. It gets fragmented into 5 bodies. Now, this is where does Frank anticipate where we're at today? So, Arthur Croker in 2012 puts out a book, and the division for the book is put up at the University of Minnesota Press. It's called Post-Humanities 22. So the book is called Body Drift. It's an analysis of Judith Butler, Catherine Hales, and Donna Haraway, 3 women thinkers, 3 female thinkers that Arthur is going to look into. And the theme is body drift. And underneath Arthur Kroger's name, it says post-humanities. And the ITIES is dimmed out, so it's post-human ITs. Post-human ITs number 22. It's a series. And Kroger's book is the 22nd book in the post-human series. Now, I'm going to read this, a couple pages, and I'm saying that this is a description of the interplay of the 5 bodies that I've laid out and that Ion says has merged. 5 bodies have merged. Let's see how well Kroger describes the situation me and Ion are talking about. Been talking about for years, and granted, Kroger was talking about body drift 20 years ago himself. Body drift. So, he says on page 1, body drift is everywhere in culture and society. Now, don't we say, I say that the 5-bodied model is applied to everywhere. So he's saying the same thing. Body drift or 5-bodied interaction is everywhere in culture and society. Though it was anticipated that the speed and intensity of technological change would effectively marginalize concern with the body, highlighting the digital rather than the corporeal, subordinating human flesh to data flesh, though it was anticipated that would happen, quite the opposite has occurred. Images of the corporeal body are the key visual language of contemporary politics. We may live in the shadow of an empire of cyber power with what the German theorist Peter Sloterdijk has described as, quote, terror from the air, unquote. But the messianic goals of, quote, total information warfare, unquote, are effectively stymied by bombs strapped to bodies of religious and political fighters, whether in the markets of Pakistan, the streets of Baghdad, the parched hills of Afghanistan, or the subways of Moscow. While the triumph of mass media, particularly television, may portend a future of pure simulation, the overriding cultural reality is that the image machine is itself haunted by memories of the body. Bodies of missing children, crime victims, bodies of those abused, violated, accidented, disappeared. While the privileged language of genomics might anticipate a future of delirious genetic engineering, the political reality today is that the future of genomics is itself challenged by religious concerns with the sanctity of the body. Of course, the rise of religious fundamentalism is itself challenged in turn by the new body politics of gays, lesbians, transsexuals, and transgendered persons. We are literally drifting through many different specular performances of the body. And I would say many bodies, but at this point he's saying we are literally drifting through many different specular performances of the body, from the reactionary to the progressive. But for all that, all commonly transformational, all evoking the sign of the body as a fateful talisman of that which must be alternatively protected, forbidden, sheltered, transgressed, emancipated. Sounds like Berlin, doesn't it?
Yeah.
The culture of Berlin that you live with.
We've seen that folk.
Right. There is no longer, if there ever was, a single binding universal history of the body, nor is it possible to speak today of the body as a cohesive singularity. So I would call that the old chemical body, the Gutenberg body. He's saying it does not hold things together. That's true. Indeed, if so many issues related to body politics, I'll read that again. Indeed, if so many issues related to bodily politics can inflect public space and private time, it is because the very meaning, both surfaces and structure of the body, has begun to drift. So the meaning of the body has begun to drift. Body drift refers to the fact that we no longer inhabit a body in any meaningful. Do that again. A is italicized. Body drift refers to the fact that we no longer inhabit a body in any meaningful sense of the term, but rather occupy a multiplicity of bodies. You couldn't get better say than that. And then he has a hyphen.
There's where you got your ideas.
No, I got it before he did. But the point is...
No, I'm joking.
Yes, he's spelling it out. We both got it at the same time, late 80s. But he says, and that's because we're reading deeply listening to McLuhan. So, a multiplicity of bodies. Then there's a hyphen. He says, imaginary, sexualized, disciplined, gendered, laboring, technologically augmented bodies. So there's an inventory of the different kind of bodies. Imaginary, sexualized, disciplined, gendered, laboring, technologically augmented bodies. That's basically 5 categories there, maybe a 6th.
Yeah.
Then he says, moreover, the codes governing behavior across this multiplicity of bodies have no real stability, but are themselves in drift. So the codes are in drift. Random, fluctuating, changing. That's like a page of Finneg's Wake. There are no longer fixed, unchallenged codes of governing sexuality, gender, class, or power, but only an evolving field of contestation, what McLuhan called dancing on the toes of the other guy, an evolving field of contesting among different interpretations and practices of different bodily codes. So yes, each body has a code. So reread that bit. Moreover, the codes governing behavior across this multiplicity of bodies have no real stability. So the codes don't have any stability, but are themselves in drift, random, fluctuating, changing. There are no longer fixed, unchallenged codes governing sexuality, gender, class, or power, but only an evolving field of contestation among different interpretations and practices of different bodily codes. The multiplicity of bodies that we are or are struggling to become, so you can't even tell when the 5 bodies started, when they will end. It's all drifting. The multiplicity of bodies that we are or are struggling to become is invested by code perspectives, never fixed and unchanging. Code perspectives are always subject to random fluctuations, always evolving, always intermediated by other objects, by other code perspectives. We know this is a matter of personal autobiography. For all the hype surrounding discussions of the extropium bodies of technological futurism, who has not had the experience of drifting within her own bodily history, selectively but no less intensely remembering past events, measuring past against present and future, drifting episodically, randomly, between the pull of social networking technologies and the always constraining push of individual autobiography? So that was a long question. Who has not had that experience? Body drift is how we circulate so effortlessly from one medium of communication to another. It is how we explore intimately and with incredible granularity of detail the multiplicity of bodies that we have become. It is how our bodies are inflected, intermediated, complicated. It is a double movement. That's like tactility, going in both directions at the same time. It is a double movement then. We drift within and across the multiplicity of our own bodily inflections, and the multiplicity of bodies that we have become, the who we are and what we would like to be, is itself caught up in a larger, more heterogeneous current of code drift. Indeed, to the question, what allows the body to be such a broad category of analysis and at the same time not to have any apparent coherence? So what allows the body to be such a broad category of analysis and at the same time not to have any apparent coherence? It might be responded that it is precisely the lack of coherence on the part of the body that is the essential constitutive condition for the specter or ghost of the body to continue to circulate as a phantasmagoric sign of putative unity. So he's saying that the reason there's one body, the flesh body, the afterimage of it is still dominant because of the way of resolving this issue. It might be responded that it's precisely the lack of coherence on the part of the body that is the essential constitutive condition for the ghost of the body, the specter of the body, to continue to circulate as a phantasmagoric or afterimage sign of putative unity. In this case, the body can inflate as a universal sign of equivalence precisely to the extent that the actual meaning of the body has radically dispersed. So as its meaning has disappeared, it can be retrieved as incredibly universally meaningful. I think that's what he's saying there. In this case, the body can inflate as a universal sign of equivalence precisely to the extent that the actual meaning of the body has radically dispersed. Circuited by all the flows of power, talking about the body, circuited by all the flows of power, patterned by code works, shaped by norms of cultural intelligibility, an object of viral invasion, with its subjectivity increasingly taking the form of possessed individualism, the body can acquire such a powerful epistemological presence as a universal sign because the bodies that we are or would like to become are themselves increasingly dispersed, intermediated, unfinished, spliced, and straining. That's exactly what Ian said. 5 bodies are merged, spliced, and diced, and scattered to the winds. The answer is blowing in the wind. So then Coker continues. Are you still with me? Still hearing this?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I'm having some ideas also.
Oh, shall I stop for a minute and hear some ideas?
Well, yes, because we were talking with Pauline how we are supposed to be the last generation of humans.
Right.
The physical body now. The merging with the new types of interfaces and chips and technologies.
And surfaces. That's a popular word in postmodernism. Surfaces. Interacting with many surfaces.
Yes, it's not seen anymore as the new order is going to put a chip.
Right.
Like many will be happy to be expanded. Like we mentioned, there is a guy who is colorblind, and he has an interface that allows him to see color, to listen to color. So maybe there will be some types of interfaces that will allow us, for example, to listen to X-rays, ultraviolet, microwaves, or any other type of radiation, vibration.
Right.
Not only what we usually listen to, the sound in the air or the digital transform for speakers. So I was thinking how when the Sputnik went out, and McLuhan says that erases the separation between first and second nature.
Yeah.
There is no more nature and artificial. That happened with us too. There is no more like the physical, biological body and the cyborg body, but we also expanded. Like Pauline says, we're already cyborgs.
Right. And I was going to say at that point in our dialogue,
without all these technologies.
I was going to point out to her at that point when she said that McLuhan said we had gone cyborg by 1950. By 1950. And she's saying we're already cyborg, and a lot of people wouldn't have any problem with that. But McLuhan and Zappa said it a long time ago. So in some ways, the five-bodied, the digitization and separation in the various surfaces of different bodies has a huge service, bypasses the Orwellian and the Brave New World. But I think people are at a loss of how to talk about it. They need to learn how to talk about it with the Bob language and Ion language. It's the only language that gives you a breakthrough. I mean, this is pretty interesting stuff that Coker's writing, and I'm reading, but you have to have a good handle on Bob knowledge to flow with this easily.
Yes, because for me, your median ecological explanations are the only ones that make full sense of what happened and what's going on.
Right.
It's not just like fragmentizing the history of art, or
it's not Freudian, it's not linguistic.
It's all.
It's not Marxist. Not capitalistic.
You're explaining in a new way. Why do we start to deep listen? Why do?
Yes. Why do we want to do that?
Do we have five bodies and then they all merge?
Yeah, Coker put out a tape at the end of the 80s. I remember where they were playing it at CKLN, and the headline on it was, "The ear, it must be destroyed. Pauline is a Noah's Ark of saving the ear. Retrieve the ear, save the ear, bring back the ear. Make it a profound religious experience."
Yes, I think it's a natural reaction because she's not only composing, she went to study ritual traditions and sound healing and many aspects of sound because like we were talking, these new environments make you feel a new frequency. mean, we are listening to something else.
Yeah.
And it can be painful. It can be, I mean, it's even going to kill most of the people because they're not going to be able to digest listening to this new frequency.
Right. Yes, unfortunately, that's what's going to happen.
So she's in a way reacting to, like, trying to find a solution, how to solve the situation.
Yes. And here,
cyborgs lost in communications.
Yes, cyborgs is not as good a word as body drift. Multiple bodies. That's better than cyborg. That's too singular.
The body drifters. Yes, but this is just like a visual.
Yes, and Croker is saying the body, the chemical body, is retrieved with all kinds of meaning. So it's not totally lost. It may be just an after image of it. What?
The listening Pauline Oliveros is talking about is the tactile listening with your whole being, which includes first the other bodies and now the merging of these bodies, because she says deep listening is listening to all there is with all you have.
Right. And
with your skin, with your feet, and she has been doing these sonic meditations, which I find very interesting because it's a way of sound training, ear training, musical training, and it's very, we may say, therapeutical in a way.
Yes, therapeutic, but I think it's got a problem if it doesn't deal with the 5 ears, the 5 types of ear. You wouldn't listen for the chip body ear. You have to approach it some other way. Doesn't have.
Yes, but you, as a DJ, you have to recognize that there is some power in the joy one can get from music.
Yes. Oh, no, I'm not knocking music. McLuhan said we live entirely by music. It's the only acceptable drug. McLuhan said music is drug enough for anybody, so you don't need to take these other drugs. Music will get you through the day and won't have so devastating health effects or insanity effects. Music is the best drug of the day, and everybody lives by it. Everybody lives by music now. But Ion is coming with a new kind of song where you may not have to listen to music every day. Just show up once a week. Get your hit from Bob.
You just have to listen to Best of Goodman.
Yes, that's a Goodman or Payday. So let me continue this, what Coker's saying. So he says, nothing is as imaginary as the material body. So we don't have a chemical body anymore. That obsolesces all the medical school's anatomy classes. And you have the afterimage of the material body, so that's sort of imaginary. So Coker says, nothing is as imaginary as the material body. Circulating, fluid, borderless, with no certain boundaries or predetermined history. Isn't that interesting? Predetermined history is like Ion. We weren't born. No predetermined history. So much of Ion is responding to Coker, Zappa, McLuhan, these important writers. Ion has come up with a scenario that isn't limited to the spiritual. It's actually what's going on in the technological environment. No predetermined history. Nothing is as imaginary as a material body. Circulating, fluid, borderless, with no certain boundaries or predetermined history. The body has no meaning today other than its intermediations. No autobiography that does not possess its own hauntologies, haunting. And certainly no drift that does not leave a trace of its presence. It has no meaning other than its intermediations. No autobiography. Now, intermediations would be texting and people responding. You get your meaning by having contact, tactile interplay. No autobiography that does not possess its own death. And certainly no drift that does not leave a trace of its presence. There definitely are codes of gender that can be transgressed only at the price of punishment. But there are always gender drifters who remix, recombine, and resplice the codes of gender performance. There certainly is a disciplinary regime of sexuality, but there are also sex code drifters who make of their own sexual assignment an opportunity to transgress the codes, to refuse the normative, to live in Berlin, to overcome the predetermined.
To be Pauline Oliveros.
Yes, to be Paulino. Against class inequities burned into, it's talking about class drifters. They're against class inequities burned into disciplined, laboring bodies. There are class drifters who make of their own protesting, rebelling, insurgent bodies a marker of the struggle for freedom. A marker of the struggle for freedom. I'll do that again. Against class inequities burned into disciplined, laboring bodies, there are class drifters who make of their own protesting, rebelling, insurgent bodies a marker of the struggle for freedom. While the age of specialization resulted in the definitive separation of the senses, body drift begins with a grand unification of the human sensorium. That's because it's an extension of tactility, which does the unification of the sensory, of the human sensorium. In genomics, new scientific theories focused on genetic drift. So, reading that again. In genomics, new scientific theories focused on genetic drift support an image of the body deeply influenced by random fluctuations, shaped by accidental events, and inflected by the vicissitudes of material history. Now, he's saying that in genomics, new scientific theories focused on genetic drift support an image of the body deeply influenced by random fluctuations. So, the theories around genetic drift. That's just the mixing of media, which has been going on through most of the 20th century. Support an image of the body deeply influenced by random fluctuations, shaped by accidental events, and inflected by the vicissitudes of material history. In the artistic imagination, representational depictions of the bounded body of modernist times, so talking about 100 years ago, in the artistic imagination, representational depictions of the bounded body of modernist times have been challenged by images of bodies circulating, crossing boundaries, in flux, with no definite purpose or certain direction. In cinema, body drift is the visual essence of power visualization of bodies of the future, with their complex intermediations of code, flesh, and desire. That would be that movie, The Fifth Element. That Ian refers to. Interpolated by ideology, addressed by power, circulating within the image vectors of mass media, mobilized within vast data archives, and at all times and places deeply inflected by questions of gender, sexuality, race, and class, the body today knows only drift in its mediated surfaces and deepest biological structures. Always circulating at the edge of codes, old and new, knowing no certain boundaries, never simply a product of gender construction or essential identity, body drift is our real technological autobiography. You have anything you want to say? We can take a break again.
Well, I was thinking, for example, how new generations may identify more, for example, with an avatar.
Yes.
With their virtual persona than with their physical body, because they're more in the cyber reality than in this reality.
Well, you have the illusion or fact of freedom, of image consumption, of hearing, deep hearing all over the place. How can the body keep up with the sensory stimulation of the chip body? No way. So it either wears you out, you drop out and you start doing fa sol la, or you take cocaine and other drugs and keep up with it, or you take the RNA drops and enjoy the benefits thereof. Now, I just heard the phone click. Are you still there, Roxy?
Yeah.
Okay. It could conk out. So you wanted to add something to that?
Yes, I mean, it's it's hard to know how the millennials or younger generations are perceiving.
Well, they're at least quadrophenic.
We're talking about just this.
They're at least quadrophenic. You can explain to millennials, they may not listen, but I can explain to them their five-bodied, motioning toward hexad situation, which is Coker is spelling out here, describing the millennials.
Yes, because I was reading to an article that some of these medicines they give to the children that have this hyperactivity.
Yeah.
It's methadone. So they're really getting from a very young age very strong medications and drugs. And what would you say? How would you explain that? Because
it means these kids are going to die a lot earlier, unless they're given a lot of prosthetics, because all these medications they take sap the magnesium out of them. This is what Carolyn's discovered. They're going to become incredibly magnesium deficient, which leads to all kinds of situations. Carolyn has several very successful people in their 20s. They're making millions, but they all got heart fibrillation or whatever it's called, AFB or something fibrillation. They got constant anxiety because they're on all kinds of weird drugs, and they're getting magnesium deficient. It's becoming like a plague because all these drugs feed off the magnesium. So we're talking kids dying early.
Yes, and this is the aspect I like, because we cannot, I found deep listening fascinating, and all the technologies Pauline Oliveros is developing to allow people with, for example, hearing limitations or other types of limitations, impairments, to participate in music and listening. But we cannot specialize in just one aspect of, for example, perception.
That's true, but I would say that Iandom is saying, like Frank said, he was the best, he should be president of the United States. I'm saying that Iandom, that me and Carolyn and Ian should be the president of the United States. We actually are the one thing you should listen to.
Did listen to Bob.
Yeah, listen to Bob's guitar solo, sax solo, drum solo, synthesizer solo, and journalistic repartee. But no, really, Carolyn's now becoming the person with the key solution, with the key album, the key song, the top hit, makes Adele and them look like absolutely irresponsible, singing with their mouths, specializing
dance.
And dance. What's that? Can you dance?
The new dance.
The new dance. The new dance. These musicians, they get out there and sing their asses off, are making people fall back on their virtual ears and their virtual mouths and their virtual eyeballs, and ignoring the multiple laser-beamed bodies that don't have and don't require mouths to sing. They just want to do silent texting, silent tapping, silent. They just want to do their typing. That's the new dance, that's dancing fingers. Okay, I'm going to go back. If you finish your point, your brilliant point there.
Well, I was thinking also how Pauline Oliveros expected music and improvisation, because she was making pieces in which she, for example, reacts to the environment real time. And she's saying you have to listen not only to patterns, ideas, conversation, but to the environment, which is also...
The environment is body drift.
The environment is body drift.
Is
No, the five-body drift is the environment. That's what Croker's saying here. Opening sentence. Body drift is everywhere in culture and society. It's the ground. The interplay, the intermediation of the bodies is the ground, is the environment. And how do you listen to those different bodies?
How do you listen to all those different bodies?
That's right. So let's see what Croker says. He says the contemporary body politics focuses today with such elemental ferocity on highly contested attempts to freeze the circulation of bodies, codes, and histories. So I think I read that a little off. That contemporary body politics does all this. That contemporary body politics focuses today with such elemental ferocity on highly contested attempts to freeze the circulation of bodies, codes, and histories is probably motivated in large part by the actual objective presence of body drift as the animating energy of culture and society. That's saying that body drift is the ground. So this emphasis on the old body, to control it, to fight over it, is motivated by the fact that you don't know where you are. You don't know which body and how many bodies you have. So then he says, the political theorist Wendy Brown has evocatively described our current politics as powerfully marked by, quote, states of injury, unquote, namely by powerful psychological reaction formations generated by deep and lasting attachments to anger from any perceived attempts to cross sexual borders, imagine new genders, or remix bodily codes. Read that again. The political theorist Wendy Brown has evocatively described our current politics as powerfully marked by states of injury, namely by powerful psychological reaction formations generated by deep and lasting attachments to anger from any perceived attempts to cross sexual. So what are they saying? The anger generated by attachments to anger, these psychological reaction formations are generated by anger at or from or because of any perceived attempts to cross sexual borders. Imagine new genders or remixed bodily codes. The anger directed today against body drift is palpable, diffuse, and often violent. So, okay. The bodily politics of gays, lesbians, transgenders, and transsexuals. Stem cell research is targeted. Reproductive rights debates. Sometimes assuming the electoral form of Proposition 8 campaigns in California aimed at preserving the rights of heterosexual normativity, at other times adopting restrictive measures aimed at marginalizing the sudden proliferation of countersexualities, seemingly in country after country marked by strikingly reactionary attempts to maintain the masculine as the universal signifier. Body drift is under attack. So if body drift is the figure and it's being attacked, we've moved to some other situation. We've moved to the ionic as ground. So body drift is the figure. So you have these states of injury that body drift is the target from. People are injured, so they lash out at. There's the anger directed today against body drift is palpable, diffuse, and often violent. It has, of course, its privileged targets: same-sex marriage, the bodily politics of gays, lesbians, transgenders, and transsexuals, stem cell research, reproductive rights debates. Sometimes assuming the electoral form of Proposition 8 campaigns in California, aimed at preserving the rights of heterosexual normativity, at other times adopting restrictive measures aimed at marginalizing the sudden proliferation of countersexualities, seemingly in country after country marked by strikingly reactionary attempts to maintain the masculine as the universal signifier. As a result of all that, body drift is under attack. And he says, and well, it might be both symptomatic sign and precondition of a fundamentally new way of understanding the body, so it's a sign and precondition. The ghost or specter of body drift is a very real threat to defenders of ideological purity.
more than a panic response to the sudden. Now, he wrote this famous book, Panic Encyclopedia, back in '89. He's now implying that panic is a bit obsolete. More than a panic response to the sudden collapse of images of the body bound up with an idea fixe, or a fixed idea, from the normative regimes of religion. Read that better. More than a panic response to the sudden collapse of images of the body bound up with a fixed idea from the normative regimes of religion, politics, or gender, the circulation of imaginary bodies, that is the essence of body drift, provokes in its wake the most bitter of cultural backlash. After all, crashing boundaries open up new possibilities, but they also aggravate the most recidivist feelings, attitudes, and perspectives. But for all that, body drift cannot really be stopped. It is constituted by the blast of information culture, envisioned by artists, implicitly communicated by social networking technologies, signified by those ineffable signs of body drift. What are those signs? Tattoos, rings, and scarification. And live daily by remixing, resplicing, and redesigning codes of gender, sexuality, class, ideology, identity. But most of all, body drift has its key theorists, Judith Butler, N. Catherine Hales, and Donna Haraway, and definitely not Bob Dobbs, whose writings provide the vocabulary so desperately required to understand the contingencies, complexities, and intermediations of body drift. Well, I think we have moved past that, but that's not the immediate topic here.
But maybe here you could talk a little about becoming a black woman and phenomenon of people.
30 years ago.
For example, there is not only transgender, but there's people that say, I identified with the black race, and I'm white, but I want to be black.
Right. Well, 30 years ago, maybe even 40 years ago, I read in McLuhan land that you can't visualize tactility. But if you were forced to, it would have to be the color black, which is not a color, I guess. But black is the way...
All colors together.
Right. Black is the way you would visualize tactility. So they said, we're all extended tactility, so we're all blacks. And then McLuhan pointed out that women were right hemisphere and men were tended to be left hemisphere. And the Gutenberg galaxy favored left hemisphere, so men and patriarchy dominated for a good stretch of time. But the electric age comes in and cancels out the dominance of the left hemisphere and retrieves at least the right hemisphere and maybe the corpus callosum, the part of the brain in between the two hemispheres. But since right hemisphere, feminine or female characteristics take over, then I knew I had to be we were all little girls. We were all women. So when I say I'm a black woman, it is actually what everybody is, and they don't know it. So I get to dominate the expertise of being a black woman. So
it's a metaphor of the drifting you're talking about.
No. Now, that's the black woman, which I 4 years ago and talked about on CKLN. With body drift, you're not limited to the chemical body of the black woman. Again, it is a multiple body situation. Are you getting an idea?
No, but I find it very interesting.
Okay. See, the black woman is the first attempt of early body drift. But when you got 5 bodies mixing with the hexatic, you can't use a body woman. You maybe be a what Zappa called a consumer amoeba. But now with Web 2.0, you can be a producer amoeba. Could you be an cephalopod or a pterodactyl? What would be an image of 5-body drift, knowing that the black woman is not prominent anymore? It's way more complex than the black woman. probably being a snake would be the best image, because the way it weaves tactile, the way its body goes in both directions as it wiggles along the ground or slides along the ground. I think the snake is the parallel worlding element. In other words, we're all Lucifer. Lucifer has taken over as the dominant image. Everybody's a slimy serpent slithering through what Ion calls slippage, interworld.
No, but I suppose he's also ascending, and before the fall he was the most perfect and the favorite and the most...
Right. We are going to bring back...
the most archangel of them all.
Yes. Could you say that again? The most what? Arcane?
Archangel.
Archangel, yes. So, but again, an image is not enough. We don't have an image of what we are anymore. That's what Coker's saying. No images have any staying power. So let's see if he says that.
Maybe it's also because of the obsolete Gutenberg galaxy. We needed before to have an image of everything.
Yeah.
And now it's another type of situation.
Now the image
There cannot be an image.
The image is the colonizer. But there's so many images, there's millions of colonizations going on, and counter responses and attacks back at the image. This is where Donald Trump becomes a major musician of our time. He is communicating quadrophonically, multi-imaged, snake-like, slithering into the White House, and everybody just scared shitless. I think Donald Trump is the Charlie Parker, Duke Ellington, Elvis, Arthur Lee, Captain Beefheart, Bob Dobbs of the present collapse of the android meme or collapse of body drift. Trump is the actual target.
I was thinking how, for example, Leonardo tried to make an image of the man in his time.
Yes.
He made this Vesuvian man.
Yes. That doesn't work anymore. Now, Ion recommends a kind of retrieve of the original archetype. Ion could be retrieving a stable image as shown in the biblical pictures of the throne, Sheila Kern's paintings of the ascended person on the throne. Ion did say that that's an archetype everybody goes through, all cultures, I guess, but that needs to be explored even more. But where does Frank come in here? What music is describing what we've been laying out the past half hour? It's his idea of digital dust. Dust, which actually is a very important word in the Ion's translation of the first. The what?
The fall.
The fall?
The dust.
The fall,
yeah.
Yes. But it's a key.
We fell because we ate the dust.
Right. It's a key image in Genesis, in what Ion calls Genesis, Garden of Eden, digital dust. So we need to know more about what Frank meant by that, what he was referring to. I'll have to look up the interview someday where he says it and just see how much he elaborates. In one of these guitar magazines, I think, in the early 90s, just before he died, they do a special article on him. It might be Guitar. Then there was another magazine. But with that in mind, the slithery snake, let's see if Coker's last paragraph fits that. Okay, so the specter of body drift. So it's a ghost, like they used to say, the specter of communism. So body drift has become a figure of resentment, something to attack. So Trump is a quadrophenic snake that everybody's attacking. So he's certainly miming the quadrophenic situation for the five bodies. So what is this post-android meme image? It's both symptomatic sign and precondition of a fundamental of ideological purity. More than a panic response to the sudden collapse of images of the body bound up with a fixed idea from the normative regimes, norm-making regimes of religion, politics, or gender, the circulation of imaginary snake-like bodies, that is the essence of body drift, provokes in its wake the most bitter of cultural backlash. The snake drifts. When you watch a snake moving along the ground, it's kind of drifting, right? It's just sliding along. After all, crashing boundaries open up new possibilities, but they also aggravate the most recidivist feelings, attitudes, and perspectives. But for all that, body drift cannot really be stopped. The snake can't be stopped. It is constituted by the blast, is made up of the blast of information culture, envisioned by artists, implicitly communicated by social networking technologies, signified by those ineffable signs of body drift, tattoos, rings, and scarification, and lived daily by remixing, resplicing, and redesigning codes of gender, sexuality, class, ideology, identity. This is what all these millennials are going through, constant upset of their gender, sexuality, class, ideology, and identity. But most of all, body drift has its key theorists, Judith Butler, Catherine Hales, Donna Haraway, and not Bob Dobbs, whose writings provide the vocabulary so desperately required to understand the contingencies, complexities, and intermediations of millennial body drift. Can we bring this?
Yes, I think a very important part of our health is to have the explanation. Like she says, it's desperately required.
Yes. You said health, right? The mind needs a reason. The mind screams for a reason. It's got to have a reason. So we're providing the reason, the model, the image, and that would give you poise. Yes, it's very key to health. So I'm trying to think of what songs did Frank write. Is there any song titles that could be fit into this body drift situation? His play Dio Fa tried to show multiple realities and environments interfacing. Maybe Dio Fa does that. So if you're listening to this, we will end this series, however thousands of hours is going to be. When we finally get to the end, you will hear me discuss Dio Fa, God Lies, with Ike Willis, and how Ike was amazed at this project that he hadn't fully been aware of. He only got glimpses of it that Frank had planned on and laid out in his book in 1989, the Dio Fa scenario. That's the clue.
You're going to do the Dio Fa Sola.
All right. Yeah. And what was I saying? The Dio Fa is... Yeah, so that's the closest to multi-modular environments. Are they particular bodies? That's another matter. So maybe so we're going to end with the series will feature my dialogue with Ike Willis, and then Ike Willis and I discussing how Frank was murdered. He was attacked.
Frank says Dio Fa means like God makes, right?
No, God lies.
No?
He says it means God. Dio Fa, F-A, means lie. God lies.
Oh.
Ooh.
Ooh.
Hey, you explain a little bit. I got to go take a drink. You wax on eloquent.
No, maybe you could play something by Pauline. Just
okay.
Or did you already play the interview?
No. I didn't play the interview. Do you want me to play Listening Deeply or Deeply Listening? The music. It's 5 minutes.
No, but maybe you could play the first part of the interview. It's 15 minutes.
Okay. That's a good idea. All right, so let me find that.
You can.
Somebody named Roxanne sent it to me. Let me look for it.
I've been getting many emails from Roxana. Here, part 2, part 1, first part right here. I think I've got everything open.
Should I hang up and then?
No.
Because
Why?
it's 15 minutes. No.
No. Just you can lay your phone down and lay your phone down and walk around.
Oh, I can listen.
Yeah, and just put it on mute. Okay, so up comes a thing. I've got to make sure everything's open. That's open. So we haven't finished. We're just going to take a little example of.
Yes, maybe by listening, I can think of other ideas.
Right. Okay, so web control panel, that's done. Yeah, I think it's all ready to be played. All systems are on. Just a second. There it is. Okay, here we go.
We have half an hour approximately, Pauline.
Well, I have a short time.
Okay, right. So I just want to mention, I'm a good friend of Gerd Stern.
Oh, my goodness, yeah.
He was there in '63 with you at the Tape Center. Do you remember that?
Yes, of course.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, he's done this great oral biography at San Francisco University or something out there. They have this booklet, and he goes through everything, starting at Black Mountain College,
yes,
1950 or something.
Right.
He has an incredible history. He basically interacted with everybody.
Yeah.
And what became the counterculture or different arts, even up to MIT.
Right.
And I've done a 24-hour interview with him. It was done over several months. I can send you a link if you'd like to hear. We go into the detail of that long book, and plus things that he didn't talk about.
Right. I'm sure.
So I'll say hi to him for you.
Okay, please.
Yes. Well, one of the main discoveries of the century, the scientists say, is these gravitational waves that they were able to notice because they heard a C sound coming from the collision of two black holes.
Right.
And that made me think about you because you were always talking about how important it is to hear, to listen. And with the technologies, we're now starting to listen into the quantum, really, amplifying things that were not possible to hear, and black holes. And I think what you were saying, like you said, since a long time ago, is becoming more and more relevant now that sound is becoming also really important in the evolution of technologies, and they say this is going to change all physics, and they even think teleportation might be possible using sound, and how everything is frequency and everything is interacting, and that's something I gained from your work, this awareness of sound massaging like the molecules and the cells, and how everything is connected, and how we can hear maybe without being aware from our ears or our brain, but there is something in many levels in our body that is listening.
Yes, I believe that.
Yes, maybe you could tell us more about how you see your theories now in this situation.
Oh, well, I feel that it's more than ever important to continue to investigate what is listening. I mean, our ears are not listening; they are sensing, and they're gathering waveforms. But the waveforms are transmitted to the brain, and the brain is where listening takes place. Except that there is an important other aspect, which is vibration, and vibration of the skin, for example. So that we have much more opportunity to listen through vibration, as well as having waveforms transmitted to the brain. So we have to begin to understand listening as a whole body function, and to give attention to that, because we've been taken away from the body by focused activity concerning speech and mathematics or coding, so that this is the focus on a stream of information, but forgetting about the complete expansive nature of all interconnection. And so the interconnection of all things comes through whole body functioning and sensing.
There's one thing I also always find very interesting. You said you are making music, but not only music, also silence.
Oh, well, silence.
Silence that you can hear.
That's a problematical term.
Yeah.
Silence. Silence, if you have a definition of silence, it's zero vibrations. And if we had that, we wouldn't exist.
That is not possible.
No. So it's an abstract concept. But we have relative silence, or relative quiet, I would say.
Or less stimulation.
So, I mean, we have to have... Huh?
Less stimulation.
Yes. But, I feel that it's important to recognize that there are different ways of understanding what that term means.
In Hot and Cool, the collection of McLuhan essays in 1967 by Gerald Stern, the very last question Stern asked McLuhan is, will there ever be silence? And McLuhan says, objects are unobservable. Only relationships among objects are observable. I always thought that was a good answer.
Yeah, that's a very good answer, I would say.
The acoustic is coming back, but it's not the acoustic as we used to think we hear only with the ear. It's the tactile, or the more synesthetic type of perception. Mm-hmm. And there are now some technologies, like they're developing these brain interfaces, and there is also like there is a man, I forgot his name, but he has a type of interface because he's colorblind, mm-hmm. and this allows him to listen to color.
Yeah.
I
remember that.
Yes. So, how do you see technologies expanding our hearing?
Mm-hmm. Well, first of all, we have to recognize all types of human being. And for example, in the fall, I had a seminar which was devoted to building instruments and interfaces for the deaf and hard of hearing, so that they could participate in musical activity. So this is a marginalized community. I mean, a community that has its own culture and definitions and so on. But it's important that we accept all. We have equal opportunity for people. participate in some kind of musical activity. So this is happening. And this was a very, very interesting seminar, because it's very interesting to think about making music if you can't hear in the usual way. So then it means that you have to find ways of synesthesia or for perceiving vibration, so that you can understand what is happening in some way. So I think that we can't just keep our definitions focused in certain ways. We have to open and expand and find new ways to work together.
So when you say whole body listening, I think that was your phrase, that includes or is limited to synesthesia?
No, it includes it. Yeah, for sure. It includes any way we can. Anything we can do. Anything we can do and anything that we haven't learned that we can do.
Did you have something to say, Roxy, to that?
Well, I found what you do very interesting, because it also gave me the awareness that we're immersed in like some type of music that never stops. And you interact with this sound landscape in real time. Mm-hmm. And for me that was like a big revelation, that because in a way, like McLuhan says, technologies has always been about expanding some of our senses. Mm-hmm. And this has been this odyssey of expanding ourselves. And I think already in our physicality we have a lot of possibilities, like we don't use the whole brain, or there is all this junk DNA, but I think there will be new technologies that are going to activate that. And the expansion is not necessarily going to be into this hybrid cyborg, because many say we are the last real humans. The next generations are going to be cyborgs. Mm-hmm. So, yes. What do you think about this?
We already are. Look at us.
Yeah.
I got my little earbuds on. You got your headphones. You got your big microphone there.
McLuhan said that the telegraph changed the newspaper. And he said because people were able to get information from all over the globe, he said that was retrieval of acoustic space. Electrically, he used to say we hear from all directions. So socially, we now can get communication from around the world. So then he would say that the newspaper, the telegraph press, was acoustic space, an image of acoustic space. So he was starting to think synesthetically. He was mixing up the literalness of what is hearing with that statement. I thought that was pretty neat. People do not think they're experiencing hearing when they're looking at a newspaper page, but they're actually experiencing the visual effect of an acoustic simulation that happens with a telegraph. That I see that as a kind of mixture in pushing the definitions of acoustic space and other senses that came from Finnegan's Wake. Did you ever look at Finnegan's Wake, or did you ever think about Finnegan's Wake and what Joyce was trying to do?
Sure.
Were you aware of that, like in the 50s, as a young person?
Yes, I was. Yeah.
How did you become aware of it? Through your own experience or through your teachers? You remember how?
Not through teachers. I don't remember exactly how.
Maybe John Cage?
No. I really can't remember exactly how I came across Joyce, but I did. and I was interested in it because of his interest in sound.
Right. I used to ask McLuhan which came first, the ear or the eye, and he said, well, we're still working that out, but he would in his writing say that Finney's Wake shows the ear as the ground sense.
Well,
he would capitalize ear.
Well, I would say that the ear is the primary sense. It's the first to develop. And
what about touch? How does touch relate to, McLuhan called it audible tactile?
Yes.
Our present experience.
Yeah, so I think kinesthetic is there as well, because the ear, has also a lot to do with balance.
Proprioception.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. But I differentiate between hearing and listening.
Yes, I've heard you talk about that.
Right. And
so when you say what is listening, it's not like give me a definition of listening. The question means what in my being is listening.
Right, exactly.
It's like our whole being is listening, actually.
Sometimes, but not always.
But it could. Go ahead.
Well, I mean, because it can be shut down. Listening can be shut down, but what comes into the ear is not shut down.
Okay, that was pretty good. Okay, Roxy, that's pretty good.
Yes.
That's the beginning, and there's another.
That's another video.
Right, let me stop that. N-Gone, oh, that's one you made, N-Gone. Well, that fits what I want to play. I've decided that Zappa's composition, N-Lite, capital letter N and then hyphen and then L-I-T-E, may be applicable to the multi-body drift, because when you, it comes on Civilization Phase 3, and it's 18 minutes long, and it's made up of 6 parts. The first part is called Negative Light. The second part
but
is...
maybe before you go into that, I just want to make very short comments.
Okay.
The things I was listening.
Go ahead.
That listening is still a mystery. There is no explanation, a real explanation of what's going on when we listen. Because as many have discovered, from Helmholtz, who did the first studies and tried to explain how we listen, it's a very, very complex process, and there is not only the physiological, there is many things affecting what you listen, how you listen, and it's still a big mystery. We don't know what is really going on. And it goes beyond the perception of vibration. It has to do with memory and culture and psychology and many other aspects. Then another thing is, she says, it's the first sense that we develop. And we start reacting to sound, I think, after 2 weeks as fetuses. Already this thing that is not even a fetus, something, it starts reacting to vibration, for example, to the voice of the mother or the sound of the heart.
Right.
There are some recordings, some videos of with micro cameras, and this thing that is not even human reacts, moves when there is some sound stimulation, and then it's the last sense that is turned off, because some people that came back from death, they recount that they could listen everything that was going on around them. That people were crying or whatever they were saying, like they got an operation and they thought he's dead, and they tried to say something, but they can't. But it's very interesting how the listening, it has to do with our activation as gods or as humans. It's like Ian says, life starts when we breathe, but then maybe what we call recollected lucidity, the awareness, starts with sound. I'm not sure.
But isn't it sound in tandem with touch? Audile, tactile? What happened? Phone must have died. Let me... so what I want to play is N-Lite, which is an 18-minute piece, and Zappa has 6 parts, and the first part is called Negative Light. So negative light, we in Eindom talk about negative pH, which we are creating. Then you have part 2, Venice Submerged. LaRouche does a lot on the Venetian oligarchy. And then 3, The New World Order. 4, The Lifestyle You Deserve. 5, Creationism. And 6, He is Risen. So N can mean many, multiple situations. So the multiple-bodied thing could be symbolized by the letter N. And light means, L-I-T-E means superficial, surface, like the beer, light beer. So you have these themes that I could interject the different bodies on. But I won't do that right now because Roxy's not here. I will go get her. But let's hear a bit of N-Lite. I'm not sure if I'm going to play the whole thing, but that's what we're featuring right now. Boy, that was awesome. That was N-Lite by Zappa. So what I need to do, I'll put on a little shorter thing while I get Roxana back on the line. Well, that never happened before. Frank Zappa's N-Lite, followed by Paul Anka from a song 50 years ago, Put Your Head on My Shoulder. After your head got lopped off by listening to N-Lite, you pick up your head and you put it on top of someone's shoulder. They carry it around for you. Now, listening to N-Lite, which I've not listened to in 20 years, I was quite impressed with it in terms of the snake-like qualities of the shifting and moving of the body drift and the growling caveman voice in there.
When I was hearing that, I was thinking maybe the different languages come from the different types of blood for some reason. I don't know why.
The different what?
Languages.
Oh, the different languages of love, did you say?
No, came from the different types of blood.
Oh,
why will different languages
I know why. That's a good point. The proprioceptive, when you're taking the RNA drops and talking to Ion is almost like the voice of the autonomic, the proprioceptive, the movement along the bodily fluids of the nervous systems of our landscape, externally and internally. So you said you thought of the 5 types of blood. That's very good because we're talking about movement, river run, on granular, subatomic, and macro levels. So it's snake-like. That's why I said snake. Matter of fact, McLuhan has on page 136 of From Cliched Archetype, a page I've quoted 1,000 times. The Thailanders, their sensory bias and sense of mastery is indicated by the phrase, I know it like a snake swimming in water. That's their sensory bias, a tactile bias. I know it like this. When they feel they are in the zone, they're in charge, or or a mastery of something they're doing, they feel like a snake swimming in water. It's amazing. I just said snake, and then this comes up, and then you're proprioceptive. It all fits. Of course, it's already been happening. I'm only catching up to myself. I already said all this, right? It's just recognizing it. So, yeah, that's...
You're just replaying.
I'm replaying what I already said. There was a line in the Explorations Journal I mentioned earlier where McLuhan says, is anybody listening? He also has a statement, let me repeat what I was about to say. Let me repeat what I was about to say. That's what we're talking about here. That's multidimensional. Now, the slipping and sliding of the parts of N-Lite, then I'm thinking of N-Gon, because Ion says we've moved out of the octet into the N-Gon, letter N, and in mathematics that's like infinite, I guess, innumerable dimensions. Zappa is showing many dimensions in this piece. And he begins with negative light, which reminds me of, part one's called negative light, reminds me of negative pH. And then Venice submerged is part two. Venice, the symbol of oligarchic corruption that LaRouche has done a lot of history on. It's submerged. The oligarchy's gone. 3, the New World Order. Well, the New World Order is a fake operation to cover up the fact that it got submerged. 4, the lifestyle you deserve. That's nice. 5, creationism, that's making your own spaces. And 6, he is risen, sort of a Christian theme. Now, how can we put the 5 or 6 bodies into this? The chemical body would be the New World Order. The astral body would be negative light.
May I ask you, why did you say that the chemical body is the New World Order?
I don't have to explain myself. I'm just making it up. I'm just creating a crock of shit. I'm just creating an instant pattern.
No, I think it's very interesting, but I would like to...
Okay, I can explain it. I'm just joking. I just want to insult you or do that funny tone. But no, the New World Order is the inevitable organization for the chemical body level of life. I mean, you got the digital attack on nations. You've got the ion attack on the blood. You got this total chaos going on. What will come out of it is a world government structure, not in politics but in actuality. The nomadic global population will drift around the planet, working here and there. They're dragging their chemical bodies where they go. So the dream of world government 100 years ago for the chemical body has been totally smashed and made not even significant. So it's not a threat to people's identity if you have a paranational, multi-shifting, multi-bordered employment service for the chemical body. So that's why the New World Order. The actual guys that were trying to New World Order have a conspiracy in the old sense of Big Brother. That's Venice, and it's gone. Big Brother, the Illuminati aren't in charge anymore. So that's Venice submerged. What body would that be? I would say that's a TV body. Then the lifestyle you deserve, you're able to make up any situation you want. So that would be the chip body. Creationism would be, what ones have I not said? Chemical, TV, and chip. Astral body. Astral body would be negative light. And then the mystery body would be he is risen. And the hexad body, the 6, would be creationism. Creating your own intergalactic, what did I call it today? Terra firma. Your own terra firma. Wow. I think I put it together. I brought order out of chaos. I made it up with impromptu, improvised pattern recognition. Did it make sense?
Yes.
It did. You have no choice. You haven't got a counter interpretation, have you? You want to improve on what I did? Do you want to do it? Show me how the title.
No, I agree.
You agree? Very easy. No, it's interesting. The New World Order is a chemical body. The negative light is the astral body. Venice Submerged was a TV body. The Lifestyle You Deserve was a chip body. And He Is Risen is the mystery body, and creationism is the hexadic body. Like we're creating a new world in the hexad with Ion's icelic mandate. We are creating a new world. It's a new beginning. It's what the biblical creationism was trying to explain and had no clue. And recent talking with Ion about the details of certain parts of the Bible have rubbed that home, smacked it into my brain. It's quite obvious that the Bible could not be interpreted or understood until this week. This week we are getting a clue on it. Plus what we did with Rewrite and the Revelation series, which I recommend you listen to again, Roxy. But did you carry on your project to go back and re-listen to everything starting at the beginning of the cash flows? Did you get interrupted by other matters on that project?
Yes, but I did a lot.
What was it like?
Well, very revealing because I told you there were things that I thought I understood, but now I have a different view or perspective on many.
Of some of the cliche themes, some of the themes that...
Yes, and I understood in a way why is it that we have to ask. Because if they will just be saying things, that will become like a dogma.
Yes.
And making us ask, wondering, is more like making you wonder and
stopping the dogmatic tendency
by the mystery and.
The mystery of meaning.
Yeah, it forced your audience participation.
Right.
Your research, your thinking. So it activates other aspects of you that will not be activated if you will just say, okay, this is the information.
That's beautiful. That's a wonderful explanation.
It will become like a cult, and we have to squeeze them because it's a way of. I think humans in the fallen state always needed these stories and needs and mysteries because looking for answers of those questions is what has moved humanity.
Right.
Since the fall, the trying to find the answers and to understand, to overlay.
Yeah, and wonder why the mind demands answers. Always fighting off the mind's efforts to become stagnant and paralyzed. The mind loves that. Also, the mind likes James.
It's also clear why they will say that's no longer, that's old school, that's no longer like that, things are changing. So that we don't stop, like we think, oh, I've been listening for so long, I know now.
Right.
Because everything is becoming and
becoming.
It's been such a transformation, such a reset that we better start deep listening to Ion and
yes, deep listening to Cashflow. How does James Martinez come across? Re-listening to him.
Well, I think he was sort of fun, sympathetic.
What?
But I think he was also into this mode that many like to be fighting against something. Like they think it's heroic or good. They think they're changing the system by
resisting.
Yeah, by.
What was the previous word? You said simpatico? Sympathetic? What was that word?
Yeah, because some words exist in other languages I speak, so I'm not sure they exist in English. Like, no, it might not be the right.
What did
word.
you mean, though? Sympathetic? Is that what you said?
Yes.
Sympathetic. You mean he was trying to stay tuned in? He was sympathetic?
No.
Oh. It was over his head?
No, it's likable.
He's likable. Okay, likable. He was likable. Pleasant.
No, you actually had like a nice atmosphere going on.
Yes.
Sort of.
Yeah. That was nice. Me and James, we had a nice simpatico, likableness.
But I think you cannot think of this environment as something, like I say, your only agenda should be to complete, because this is not going to be like your source of income, or I don't know.
Source of prestige, source of anything.
Yes.
At best, a source of mystery. So here's a note to what we just played. Zappa, in one of the biographies of Frank Zappa by Neil Slavin called Electric Don Quixote, the story of Frank Zappa, on page 325, Frank answers a question about N-Lite, and he says, it was put together out of two unrelated sequences. There's a group of notes in front of this one sequence that just happens to sound like In the Navy from the Village People song. He says you don't realize it until it's gone by. And then, hey, that's In the Navy. So that's the N. The N, I guess, refers to Navy. And the light part is this sequence that was basically a bunch of very fast and short synthesizer pockets that had the computer title 1,000 Points of Light. So you have very fast and short synthesizer pockets. That would be dropping into different body pocket dimensions, as Ian calls it, flipping in and out, interdimensional five-body transition. And 1,000 points of light would be all the places you're touching on as you slip and slide in body drift. And, of course, you're in the Navy because you're in the water of the circulating bloodstream. So, and there's two unrelated sequences. He puts together two things that are not meant to be in the same room. But he makes it work. Okay, so...
And that's another thing that I think is interesting from the series of pieces with the differential frequencies that Pauline Oliveros made.
Right.
That you put this frequency, which is beyond your hearing, in the high range and in the lower range, and then you get a third resulting frequency that you can hear, but is non-existent. And this idea of two things coming together and manifesting a third one, I think is really revealing. Like we need dialogue, conversation, and deep listening, because this is how things manifest. The coming together of two. I mean, I say your music is the thing manifesting, but you always need an audience. You always need somebody to talk to.
Yeah.
And, people had this idea that they could pray to a God and engage in this conversation to manifest or to ask for things that it's not an outer God that is manifesting what you're asking for. So that's and also how, for example, two particles bond together and then they create a new element, and this is part of the becoming. How different things are engaging in new conversations.
Yes.
And changing.
Well, McLuhan had a great line.
Oliveros.
When information brushes against information, the results are often startling and effective. When information brushes against information. So two unrelated.
Yes, and this is a wonderful mystery of humanity. How Bob has always a quote from McLuhan for everything.
That's right. Yeah, how could that be? How could that be?
Yeah.
Well, it's a skill. It's a talent. It's a knowing. I have a knowing, and I know who.
No, I think he's just like telling you.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, my little Marshall, my little whispers in my ear. over here, Bob.
You're deep listening.
Yeah, I'm deep listening. Now, I think I found an obscure interview with Zappa that I'd like to read. I don't remember ever reading it. But let's see if we find if there's something appropriate to what we've done. So what did we do? We discussed I know I did the body drift, but what were we doing before that? You were talking, about Pauline.
Well, we were talking some of the similarities also between Frank and Pauline, and how important is audience participation and listening to as part of realistic education. But Pauline goes beyond that. She says it really helps you on your personal and community growth and expands your creativity, your playfulness, your engagement. You can engage in many other things, collaborate, improvise, experiment, expand, and just by learning how to deep listen.
Yes.
It can really change your life. So.
Okay. I think you're right there. So then we did body drift, and then we played N-Lite to show the music of drifting, body drift, and now this article. And then after the article, we will play my dialogue with Don Theo and how I corrected his book on McLuhan. 3 hours or more. 3.5 hours of Bob and Don in the editing room.
This is advanced.
Yes, very advanced Bob. This is Bob without McLuhan helping him. This is Bob. Well, Bob does quote McLuhan probably, but so I don't know where this comes from, but let's just see what the article says. It's Frank Zappa. Although primarily considered a composer, well, that's well into the scene. I don't know if he was ever considered a composer until the 80s or something. So, although primarily considered a composer, Frank Zappa's lyrics reflect his unique approach to rock and roll almost as well as his music does. Combining a theater of the absurd sensibility, sharp-edged satiric humor, and a hair-trigger threshold of outrage, his odes to teenage life, set in a 50s backbeat, are classics of the snide put-down. Always in the vanguard of modern music, Zappa was the first, and is still perhaps the only musician to bring a classical orientation to the form, producing pieces which certainly might be thought of as symphonic rhythm and blues. With his group, the Mothers of Invention, in the summer of 1967, the infamous Summer of Love, Frank Zappa brought a wicked and spontaneous theatricality to the rock stage at the Garrick Theater long before anyone else was doing it. Since then, Zappa has extended his vision further into the realms of classical music, rock, jazz, and R&B. He has also become involved with films, such as his movie 200 Motels. Known for his hostility to reporters, Zappa was nonetheless quite cordial in our meeting at the Golden Gate Motel in Brooklyn, overlooking scenic Sheepshead Bay. So, Frank says, let's see what new patterns. Some of this we'll have heard many times before, but see if there's something new here. Frank says, I didn't start listening to music until I was about 15 years old because my parents weren't too fond of it. And we didn't have a radio or a record player or anything. I think
Amazing. That's a real amazing revelation.
Yeah.
I thought he was listening all his life.
Did you say by himself?
Yes.
Yeah.
The type of music.
Well, he wasn't even listening. He was actually making chemistry at that point, blowing up things. He was not an ear person. He was tactile and engaged in...
But that makes him even more amazing because he starts listening when he's 15 and then he becomes a great composer just like that.
Wow.
That's amazing.
Right. Good point. And he says, I think the first music that I heard that I liked was Arab music. And I don't know where I ever ran into it, but I heard it someplace, and that got me off right away. Then I heard a song called I by the Velvets on the Red Robin label, and G and Shaboom, Riot and Cell Block Number 9, and Annie Had a Baby. By accident, I heard those things, and they knocked me out. And he says, I didn't start writing songs per se until I was about 20 years old, 21 maybe. I mean, that's 61, 62. He's going to be on Steve Allen in 63. You're right. He starts real late, starts composing, and all of a sudden he's on TV.
It's like, I think he was Francesco Zappa and he was claiming these things like Leonardo. Like.
That's right. He didn't need to have any education. He already had been doing it for 200 years. That's a good point. Yes, this could be proof that he's Francesco. I didn't start writing songs per se until I was about 20 years old, 21 maybe, because all my compositions prior to that time had been orchestral or chamber music. So he's talking about writing songs. Okay, so he started composing chamber stuff when he was 14 or so, before he even heard any music. Yeah, he started composing before he heard any music. Yes, Francesco. But then he wrote songs when he was 20, 21. I think the basic idea of being a composer is if you're going to be true to yourself and write what you like without worrying whether it's going to be academically suitable or whether it's going to make any mark in history or not. My basic drive for writing anything down is I want to hear it. The very first tunes that I wrote were 50s doo-wop, Memories of Almonte, which actually became a small hit. Memories of Almonte and stuff like that. It's always been my contention that the music that was happening during the 50s has been one of the finest things that ever happened to American music, and I loved it. I would agree with him there. I could sit down and write 100 more of the 1950s type songs right now and enjoy every minute of it. Every minute of it. I think my writing is as influenced, however, by country blues as it is by 1950 stuff. I've always been fond of Muddy Waters, Lightning Slim, Howlin' Wolf, and those guys. At the time, I was living in a part of town called Echo Park. Now, this would be the little house that you can go on my timeline, about 1997, and we visit the little house at 1819 Bellevue Avenue. So he says, at the time, I was living in a part of town, and he had just been gotten out of jail for being in jail for 10 days or something, kicked out of Cucamonga and lost his studio and everything. At the time, I was living in a part of town called Echo Park in Los Angeles, which was a Mexican, Japanese, Filipino, black neighborhood, and I lived in a little two-room place, grubby little place on the side of a hill, 1819 Bellevue Avenue. So you go to the summer 1997 on my timeline, and you can see me visiting that place with Carolyn, Scott, and Jerry Fiolka. In that house, I wrote...
Being in such an environment may have allowed him to be exposed to many types of music.
Yes.
Other sounds like sound landscapes.
Right.
And do you think maybe he had the same station as Pauline?
Oh, yeah. No, he had Pacifica's L.A. station, which is KPFK. Berkeley is KPFA. They're both part of the same Pacifica network. And he actually, I think he got on it very early. He did get on the St. Mary's College station. He wasn't even a student. And he pretended to be a student, got on the college radio, and had a show about for a week before he got caught. he got to play all the different. He did an early version of me. He played what he wanted to play, different things. So let's see. He wrote in that little place, in that little house. He wrote "Who Are the Brain Police?" "Oh No, I Don't Believe It," "Hungry Freaks," "Bow Tie Daddy," and 5 or 6 others. A lot of the songs off the first album, known as Freak Out, had already been written for 2 or 3 years before the album came out. So when he started writing, early 60s, he started writing a lot. And a lot of songs wouldn't come out until the 3rd or 4th album. So a lot of the songs off the first album, written 2 or 3 years before the album came out, and a lot of songs, other ones, wouldn't come out until the 3rd or 4th later albums. About 50% of the songs were concerned with the events of 1965. That's the Watts riot. Also when he was in jail and when he got out and he goes to L.A. and the new scene starts. Los Angeles at that time, in the kiddie community that I was hanging out in, he's calling it kiddie community, the world of college dropouts and stuff, they were all getting into acid very heavily. And you had people seeing God in colors and flaking out all over the place. That would have been fun. You had plenty of that. And meanwhile, there was all that racial tension building up in Watts. I was up to San Francisco once or twice, but I wasn't interested or influenced by the scene there. Basically, I thought what was happening in San Francisco, along with Pauline, Oliveros, in that early stage was ... Well, I'll tell you what I saw when I went there. Okay, so here he is moving into Pauline's scene. Basically, I thought what was happening in San Francisco in that early stage was... Pause. Well, I'll tell you what I saw when I went there. Whereas in L.A. you had people freaking out, that is, making their own clothes, dressing however they want to dress, wearing their hair out, that is, being as weird as they wanted to be in public, and everybody going in separate directions. I got to San Francisco and found everybody dressed up in 1890s garb, all pretty specific codified dress. It was like an extension of high school, where one type of shoe is the in shoe, belt in the back, peggers, or something like that. It was in the same sort of vein, but it was the costume of the 1890s. It was cute, but it wasn't as evolved as what was going on in L.A. In San Francisco, they had a more rustic than thou approach. Everybody's trying to be more rustic than you. From there, Zappa and the Mothers moved on to New York in the summer of 1967. Frank says, there wasn't too much going on in the village, in Greenwich Village. There wasn't too much going on in the village that interested me. Didn't interest him. The people who came to see us at the Garrick mostly had short hair. They came from middle-class white Jewish environments, mostly suburban. They came to see our show because we were something weird that was on that street, and we were a sort of specialized recreational facility. He talks about this recreational facility, human engineering stuff, in the notes to We're Only for the Money. We're only in it for the money, so... The reason they were shocked in those days was that they hadn't seen or heard anything that came close to what we were doing. Now, he says, now, after so many groups imitating various aspects of what we did, they've seen it from other sources. Take, for instance, Alice Cooper. Basically remember, he was the first to sign Alice Cooper. Basically what they're doing is a cosmeticized version of the same thing we were doing in 1967. He's taken the obvious showmanship aspects without doing the difficult musical things. By simplifying the music to the point where you don't have to worry about it too much, and doing it with a lot of lights and a lot of props, you can put together a show that can have wider appeal. Then the journalist says, eventually our discussion shifted to his feelings about lyric writing. Quote, Frank says, I think that by the time I put a lyric down on a piece of paper and go through all the drudgery of setting it to a musical format and rehearsing it and so forth, that they're all reasonably successful in saying what they were intended to say. There's plenty more that could be said, but there are mechanical obstacles in the way of getting that out to an audience. I think there are lots of things that I'd love to be able to express to people in lyrics, but being sort of a rational person, I sit down and figure it out. Do those people really want to know? And is it worth the trouble to write it out, rehearse it, perform it, night after night, record it? I don't understand what he's saying there. But being sort of a rational person, I sit down and figure out, I guess this is what he thinks about. Do those people really want to know? Is it worth the trouble to write it out, rehearse it, perform it night after night, and record it? Just to express my point of view on a subject when it's none of my business to inform somebody else about it in the first place. So he thinks about just to express my point of view on a subject when it's none of my business to inform somebody else about it in the first place. That's a pretty ionic view there, or what sometimes ion sounds like. Just to express my point of view on a subject when it's none of my business to inform somebody else about it in the first place. Basically, what people want to hear in a song is I love you, you love me. I'm okay, you're okay. The leaves turn brown, the leaves turned brown, they fell off the trees. The wind was blowing, it got cold, it rained, it stopped raining. You went away, my heart broke. You came back, and my heart was okay. I think basically that is deep down what everybody wants to hear. It's been proven by numbers. So you start to think about the performer's role as an entertainer, and that the audience is paying money to come there and see you do something that will basically gratify them. And I have a conflict where I believe that people are entitled to get off as much as they can, and I think entertainers ought to do just that. However, I don't merely want to go out there and bullshit my way through a show. I want some substance, too. So I have to mix it up a little bit and do some of the things that people wish to have done before their very eyes on stage. And at the same time, keep myself from going crazy by writing down some of the things I want to hear. Usually after I finish writing a song, that's it. It doesn't belong to me anymore. When I'm working on a song, it takes weeks and weeks to finish, and the orchestra stuff takes even longer than that. It's like working on a construction of an airplane. Now, he talks about working on an airplane on Lumpy Gravy, one of the characters. So that's interesting. It's a metaphor for him. It's like working on a construction of an airplane. 1 week you're a riveter, or you're putting the wiring in, or something like that. It's just a job you do, and then you go on to the next step, which is learning how to perform it or teaching it to somebody else. I feel that all the material I've written, as far as my own appreciation of it, goes through a cycle where, especially if it's something I'm going to record, where you work on it so much that by the time you finish it, you can't stand it anymore. I'll read that again. I feel that all the material I've written, as far as my own appreciation of it, goes through a cycle where, especially if it's something I'm going to record, where you work on it so much that by the time you finish it, you can't stand it anymore. You know, you just get saturated with it. When you get to hear it played right, when you get to hear it played correctly or right for the first couple of times, that's the get-off. After that, I don't like it again until it's a few years old and it's been recorded, and I'll pick up the record and I'll say, that's hip. He has, in the animation dental hygiene thing, he has Jeff Simmons, the cartoon thing in 200 Motels. He goes, that's hip. So he's mocking himself. And I'll pick up the record and I'll say, that's hip. Who Are the Brain Police was a phenomena because I was just sitting in the kitchen at the Bellevue Avenue house and I was working on Oh No, I Don't Believe It, which didn't have lyrics at the time. And I heard, it was just like there was somebody standing over my shoulder telling me those lyrics, and it was really weird. I looked around. I mean, it wasn't like, hey, Frank, listen to this, but it was there. So I just wrote it down and figured the proper setting for it. He was fucking channeling or something similar. He's saying there was somebody there.
You?
Yes, it was me.
You said you put all these things there.
I can't hide it from you. You know it was me. And I was working on Oh No, I Don't Believe It, which didn't have lyrics at the time. And I heard, it was just like there was somebody standing over my shoulder telling me those lyrics, and it was really weird. I looked around. I mean, it wasn't like, it wasn't like, hey, Frank, listen to this. But it was there, like someone saying that. So I just wrote it down and figured the proper setting for it. The journalist says, I remarked that Zappa seemed to be drifting away from the kind of social protest that characterized his early albums. This interview must be the early 70s. So he says, I haven't become less conscious. It's just that I don't feel a driving need to write songs that are so obvious to everybody. We have one in the show now that's obvious to everybody, with some Richard Nixon jive in it. But I'd rather write Penguin and Bondage. My experiences have changed. They're getting less specific in certain ways, more specific in others. No, actually, this interview would be 74, 75. He says, it used to be that I would write specific things about obvious social phenomena that a large number of people could identify with because they had seen it in action. But that's less specific in terms of my own personal experience. You know, I could observe something happen that may or may not have happened to me personally, and I could still write about it. These days, such weird things have happened to me as a person that I'd rather put some of those down and do it that way. That's why I have songs like Penguin and Bondage and Montana. I write about the things that are part of my personal experience. Then the journalist says, Montana, which is in part about a man who dreams of raising dental floss on a ranch in Montana, started out this way. And Frank says, I got up one day, looked at a box of dental floss and said, I assumed that nobody had done the same thing, and I felt it was my duty as an observer of dental floss to express my relationship to the package. So I went downstairs and I sat at the typewriter and I wrote a song about it. I've never been to Montana, but I understand there's only 500,000 people in the whole state. He actually says 450,000. It has a lot of things going for it, plenty of space for the production of dental floss. And the idea of traveling along the empty wasteland with a very short horse and a very large tweezer, grabbing the dental floss sprout as it pooches up from the bush, grabbing it with your tweezers and towing it all the way back to the bunkhouse would be something good to imagine. So he liked imagining that.
He's doing the Don Quixote.
Yes, right. The journalist says, I asked how extensively he revised. Sometimes I show the lyrics to my wife, or after a while I'll get her to read them to me so I can see what the sounds are like. Because part of the texts are put together phonetically as well as what the information is supposed to be. I change lyrics all the time. A lot of them get changed by accident. Somebody will read them wrong, and it'll sound so funny I'll leave it wrong. I've always hated poetry quite a bit. I really hate it. The whole idea of poetry just makes me gag. And usually people who produce poetry, I don't like to make sociological generalizations, but that's not something I readily identify with. The suffering and the pumping on the chest with the closed fist, bowing of the head, leaves falling off the trees, the wind coming up, and all that shit. I hate it. And he says, I don't like books. I very seldom read. My wife and I have a joke because she likes to read. I say there's two things wrong with the world today. One of them is the writers, and the other is the readers. So he's against the Gutenberg galaxy here. The main thing wrong with writers is that they're dealing with something that is almost obsolete. But they don't know it yet, which is language. Here's the McLuhan part. Language as a byproduct of the technological growth of civilization has, well, think of what's happened to the English language as a result of advertising sloganism. The meanings of words have been corrupted to the point where, from a semanticist point of view, how can you convey an accurate piece of information with this language? I'm not saying writers should be replaced. I feel sorry for them. They have a problem similar to people who write music. It's just as hard to write an accurate musical concept down on a piece of paper because of the new techniques in all instruments. The other problem is that I'm not much of a singer, and most of the vocal stuff we put out I've had to give to other people to sing if I wanted to get a listenable performance out of it. Consequently, if they don't say the things with the right inflections, it changes the meaning. There's just bunches of problems in getting the true meaning across. The only guy who's really got it made is a painter. All he's got to worry about is whether his colors are going to fade or whether his canvas is properly stretched because there's no middleman. He does it and that's it. He doesn't have to send it through a bunch of other processors. And then he says, I think ideally the way it should be is you could use words for amusement purposes only, because the spoken word, the sound of words, strikes me as funny because of the differences in people's noise-producing mechanisms. But as far as the information communicated in the words, it would be better if people could communicate telepathically. I must have been talking to him. Actually, that's all a bunch of crap. Who needs to worry about all that technical stuff? I'm telling you, folks, I just don't read very much. I don't like books too much. I don't like poetry at all, and that's it. I'll read that again. But as far as the information communicated in the words, it would be better if people could communicate telepathically. So he's talking about how, nothing to do with language.
But, I'm thinking, if you want to promote something, that's a very good way to do it, because this may cause the people who is listening to that to think, why would they like to read, or why would they defend poetry? He makes people think about it and justify or find reasons why these things are valuable. Like, I'm already thinking.
Right. Yes, it's reverse psychology, reverse sociology.
So,
it's what McLuhan. Now that's a very Very similar to McLuhan.
He did that a lot.
What?
He did that a lot, like he was provoking people.
But he's even doing what McLuhan said. McLuhan said if you don't...
Ian does that also. Like he provokes you.
Yes, and you're learning how to do
like
it.
That.
You're just starting. You practiced last night at the party. You started to learn how to be a provocateur, right?
No.
No?
But, no. I agree with everybody.
No, you said Karl Marx. You provoked them. What's the greatest poet who ever lived? Karl Marx, who never wrote one fucking poem, and you go, Karl Marx. And they go, that's brilliant. That's fucking brilliant. I'm going to do a play. And you said, no, it isn't. I came up with the idea first. So that happened to Roxy. Right last night with the elite artists of Berlin, the culture, what's that term Ian uses? The Politburo, the cultural Politburo. That's what it sounded like. You went in the cultural Politburo, the bureaucrats of rearview mirror taste. But anyways, back to this point.
Well, they believe in the academy.
That's right. Now back to this point about Zappa as a provocateur. Remember McLuhan said,
yes,
if you want them to read Shakespeare.
And you do it too.
Oh, yes.
You also say things that are very, like,
mean.
You were just saying things.
Mean? I think.
What Pauline Oliveros is limited if you really listen to the bullshit around. It's not good.
Yes, I always make myself number one. I'm like Ion.
I think that's his technique to provoke people to think. Why is he saying reading is not good or poetry is not?
Yeah.
And that makes you find your own reasons why you will value something or at least think about it. And I think he might sometimes sound very radical, but I think he was really doing that as a way
rational.
to make people
very rational. He planned it out.
Things that maybe they will never think about.
Right.
They're just working and then they watch TV and that's it. And he wanted people to expand and think about other issues.
So my point is it's so appropriate to have them. Who would you put with McLuhan in my tiny note chart? Nobody would imagine Zappa, but we're always finding similarities. Zappa said, I hate poetry. Don't read it. McLuhan did the same thing. If he wanted you to read Shakespeare, he wouldn't get you to read Shakespeare. He wouldn't test you on it. He would take all the pop culture items that you've been watching, movies, music, records and stuff, and he would test you on that. And that would drive you into the arms of Shakespeare. Because whatever the teacher is telling you to pay attention to, you're not going to pay attention to. So it's the same reverse sociology as Frank Zappa. So they belong in the same quadrant. So we're coming up to the end of this interview. So
yes, or Ion is saying the most wonderful music is Best of Good Men.
That's right. Yes, and all the composers puke and don't know why. Well, you didn't hear Steve's recording, but he said the one in my mind. I'm wandering. So the article says, the journalist writes, picking up an earlier thread, I asked Zappa if he didn't think it was the artist's responsibility to educate those who know less than he does. And so if he didn't think, and he says he didn't. But we're now going to read the quote, so I don't know what that's, too many double negatives. I asked Zappa if he didn't think it was the artist's responsibility to educate those who know less than he does. He didn't.
But in a way, that's a lie because he was really. His whole music is.
He even talked about it. He talked about that. He was educating people. But what does this mean? He didn't think it was the artist's responsibility to educate those who know less than he does. He didn't.
Well, because he doesn't want to think of people like less than.
Right.
Or he's more than, but he just wants to present things that he thinks
You're muffling. Don't get muffled.
Oh.
Fix your voice there. What did you say? He doesn't what?
Yeah, for example, in the case of music, he wanted to present music that he thinks is more interesting in all aspects of...
Yeah.
All musical aspects, like more complex rhythm, more interesting text, interesting instrumentation, interesting improvisation, interesting collaborations between the responses between the musicians that are not maybe conventional audience participation, and all these things that were very pedagogical.
Very what? Icodical.
Pedagogical.
Oh, pedagogical. Yes, teaching. Yes.
Yeah, and fun. And that's something Pauline also does.
Yes. Okay, listen to what he says. I don't know if he didn't think it was the... I asked Zappa if he didn't think it was the artist's responsibility to educate those who know less than he does. He didn't. So it seems to be anti-pedagogical. But then he says, it's hard for people to imagine that somebody else knows something they don't know. And suppose you actually do know something that somebody else doesn't know, and you want to tell them about it. Well, you've got a problem, because first of all, they don't want to know. And if it's you saying, quote, if you knew this, you might be better off, unquote, then you have to sit there and say to yourself, do I really want to tell them that? Will it make them feel better? Will it do them any good if they know? I realistically look at it this way. It doesn't work. I think that it's quite possible that what I have to say is useful only to very few people, and I should not bust my ass to make it available to a large number of people, because first of all, they can't use it. Second of all, they probably don't need it. And third of all, I know they don't want it. So kiss it off and boogie.
That's
a
the
lie.
Greatest phrase ever. Kiss it off and boogie.
That's the greatest phrase? You like that?
Phrase, yeah.
You ever heard it
Kiss
before?
Off and boogie. No.
You'll be using it, I imagine. And hope you remember it. Kiss it off and boogie. Why then, so the journalist says, why then, I continue, would an artist keep making records? Why would an artist keep making records? Frank says, I think in contemporary America, most artists try to make records so that they can eat. That's all he says. Why are people making records? Well, so they can eat. Finally, the journalist says, I started clutching at straws. Didn't you ever have something you said get through to someone else in a positive way, I asked? Right, remember he's saying it's pretty hard to get someone interested in what you're interested in. Didn't you ever have something you said get through to someone else in a positive way? I asked. He says, yes. And how did you feel? Says the journalist. All I knew was that I was tired. That's Frank's answer. After he spent hours trying to get someone to notice something, he was exhausted. Well, we're not exhausted, but you probably are, so we'll end the show, this amazing Zappa special that we did without Bert. I don't know how we did it without Bert, but Bert will be back next week to fill in with his charming...
Without his charming laughter.
Yes, charming patois. So, you learned a lot tonight. I learned a lot. Everybody learned a lot. It was synergy up the yin-yang. And apparently I'm going to be learning a little bit more as soon as I hang up. So we will come back. I don't know what time. 5, okay, that would be 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, 11:12. I think JW might be a bit late, so we'll just monitor it. The earliest would be 5 o'clock. So here it is, almost 3 hours left before 5 o'clock, 1:45, and I'm going to play 3.5 hours of Don, Thiel, and me. Now, Roxy, I want you to listen and note. It seems to be dropouts. I'll be saying something, and all of a sudden I didn't finish it, and there's Don saying something else. When I digitally transferred it from the cassette tape into a QuickTime, I noticed there seemed to be gaps. So let me know what you hear, or confirm the general thing, or maybe it got fixed magically. But this is Bob and Don Thiel in January, that's the date, January 24th, 1999.
Wow, the Titans.
Yes, the Titans. So,
wow.
So, Roxy, you're welcome to come back and talk to Ion in many hours from now. Email me if you're not going to do it or if you're going to do something else, so I know what to do. All right? But
yes, I would like to.
I think you're going to like this Don Thiel stuff. You like Don Thiel. You looked into him for a few minutes. He's part of your intellectual history. So, this is Don and Bob looking over Don's new book called The Virtual Marsh McLuhan. He wrote a book on McLuhan, one of the best books, in 1971. He said he'd never write another book. But what happened was, oh, there's Bill. I must have not hooked on a Skype. He's hooking up my Skype. So he said he'd never write another book. That's 40 years ago. But circumstances led him to be getting mad because Terence Gordon's book, biography of McLuhan, put down Don. So he didn't like that. So he wrote his book to get back at everybody. And the book came out in 2001 or 2002, The Virtual Marsh McLuhan. So...
Well, I really think his scholia really expands a lot. And
you talking about Don Thiel?
Yes.
Yes, he's in Scholia, in leisure, school as leisure.
He's like commenting on the Bible.
Yes.
Mr. And yeah, he really helps in many ways to really get the deeper McLuhan.
Right. Did you just say he writes on the Bible and Is that what you said he wrote? He writes on the Bible and McLuhan?
And, on the work of Marshall McLuhan. Yeah,
yes.
Like the scholars were commenting on the margins of the Bible.
And this man, Don Thiel, was president of Trent University in the 80s, and he said to Michael Edmonds, Bob is the mantle of McLuhan. The torch is passed to Bob. So he said that years ago, and we're now, well, he was right, but it's a lot different than what we thought it would lead to. So I rest your case, Roxana. It's your case. I rest it. Hope I did a good job.
Okay, Professor Bob.
Okay, so do I hang up? No, I want to listen to this.
Yes.
All right.
Well.
Okay, I think I'll mute everybody. Don't know if there's anybody.
Yes, so
thank you very much for the Zappa.
When Ion is there, I will be glad to.
Okay.
To ask him something. Yes.
All right. I'm refreshing the page. There's hardly anybody on the calling in page. Okay, so let's start. I'm going to mute everybody.
Okay, thanks a lot. I'm going to hang up.
Okay, great. Thank you. Bye for now.
Thank you.
Yep.